Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, the DN WhatIf, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into part 1 of What If Deku Stopped Running and Became Hawk's Little Brother? A special shout out to the original creator, Evermoon2097. Please make sure to show your support by checking out their work from the description. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku scanned the worksheet for what felt like the 100th time. Everything still looked just as right as it had the first time. It might have been a waste of energy, but staring at the sheet was safer than looking around the room. Risking it, Izuku glanced up at the clock, 3:12. Only a few more minutes. Soon he'd be able to escape the hell that is school. And return to the hell that is home. Maybe Venus will be there today. He's always a bit nicer. Izuku thought wistfully. At least when he's sober. He still remembered the time he'd been locked in the fridge while his father's friends went wild. Izuku internally shivered. He peeked up at the clock again, 3:14. Subtly, he started packing. He had to get out as fast as possible. Escape this room before the rest of the class could even think about jumping him. His shoulders still throbbed from where Kojit had shoved into him that morning. Checking his bag, he felt hero journals 4 to 6 lined carefully and safely in the back section. After finding out what his father did to the first 3, no way was Izuku going to risk him finding the rest. There was the bell. Time to run. Izuku threw the remaining schoolwork into his bag, scrambled out of his seat, and speed-walked for the door. And then he tripped. His classmates snickered around him. Izuku flushed with embarrassment, his nose stinging from where it had slammed into the floor. A trickle of blood started moving its way down and around his nose. Who did that? Twisting around, he got his answer. A soft blue tentacle was unwrapping from his foot where it had just pulled him down. Hiroko. Izuku kept his gaze locked on the floor. He started moving to stand and try to leave again, but the teacher had other ideas. Midoriya, the bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. Please return to your seat and wait like the rest of the class. That was a rule? Izuku had never heard it before, and it had certainly never been implemented. Did I miss their announcement? Or was it in an email? They probably would have said something. I think I was paying attention. Or maybe it was after I bumped into Kojit. Things are a little fuzzy around then. All these words bumped around his head, Izuku having learned long ago that mumbling thoughts would only lead to more burns. He nodded meekly to the teacher. As he walked the short distance back to his desk, he could see other students looking at him and standing themselves, some even leaving the room. It wasn't a shock that the new rule only applied to him. What's the harm in holding back a quirkless Deku after all? Only after he sat back down, and most of the students were already out of the room, did the teacher finally dismiss him. He dashed for the door again, but before he could make it even a few steps, hands grabbed him by the shoulders, digging painfully into the bruise left earlier. Izuku stopped and looked back into the smirking face of QB Firmiku. The boy's brown hair was in a bob cut. His beady eyes glinted with malice and his fingers stretched out towards Izuku. His quirk allowed him to make his fingers grow quickly and elongate, even sprouting new knuckles that could bend in any direction. It was an incredible power. Where do you think you're going, Deku? He snarled. Oh, Jay just home. I've got a lot of homework so I should just be going. Izuku yelped, turning to try and make the boy let go, but to no avail. Ah, but what's the rush? Did your mommy make you cookies or something? Oh, wait, Firmiku said with a cruel smirk. Isn't it your fault At this, Firmiku extended one of his fingers. He drew a single line across his own throat. A wave of guilt washed over Izuku at the implication. Was it? Was it his fault? That's what his dad always said, practically since he was 4. His mom had died giving birth to him, and it was his fault she was gone. It was his fault that the world had been robbed of Inko Midoriya. Chai! The shout pulled him out of his thoughts, as did the slap to the face. Are you ignoring me, you useless nerd? Firmiku yelled, gripping Izuku's shoulders tighter. No, I was just Dash. Wow, you're so pathetic you can't even talk. If you like thinking about her so much, why don't you go join her in hell? Cammy knows she's there for bringing you into the world. It wasn't the first time Izuku was told to die, far from it. He'd been told to for years. Kakin, his father, his classmates, a teacher once, heck, he could have sworn even his mom's ghost was egging him on to do it. Well, I've wasted enough time with you, loser. I've got cookies and a living mom waiting for me at home. With one final shove to the floor, Firmiku walked out the door, laughing all the way. Izuku kept his gaze on the floor. The teacher had long since left the room, unbothered by the boys. Slowly, the greenette rose, hands hanging limp at his sides. His thoughts swirled. He's wrong, it wasn't my fault, right? Right. Then whose fault is it? No one's? She died giving birth to you. You took her life. Is that how it works? Why shouldn't it? I don't know. It doesn't matter anyway. She's dead and everyone else already blames you. They can't all be wrong. And even if they are, it doesn't change the fact they blame you. But I could try to convince them? Like how you convinced them that you're not worthless. Not useless? Not a Deku? Face it, you aren't much else. Best just to accept your place. Stop fighting. Maybe it'll hurt less. Maybe. If people aren't going to ever see you as more than a Deku, what's the point in trying to be more? There isn't one. Before he knew it, Deku's feet had carried him through the school and to the front entrance. He walked out into the cold daylight, the summer air stale and reeking of car fumes. He had barely turned the corner away from Aldra Junior High when he saw it. Izuku, a cheery, hoarse voice called from in front of him. Come on over. I have a surprise for you. His father was standing there, in a suit and tie, smiling sweetly at him, his acid green eyes alight with something foreign. The man was much taller than Izuku and his black hair was swept to the side. His suit buttons were undone around his neck, clearly trying to open the way in case he needed to use his fire-breathing quirk. A taxi stood next to him, engine running. Deku just stared, confused. Hisashi Midoriya was never one to pick up his son from school, much less spend money on something that wasn't food and alcohol. And come to think of it, when even was the last time he called him by his given name instead of Deku? Well, come on in. I've got something to show you, his father prompted, opening the door next to him. Obediently, Deku climbed into the back seat, hiding his wariness. His father climbed into the passenger seat, and the cab immediately started driving. Something isn't right. Father's never this happy. Where's he taking me? What's the surprise? Should I ask? The cab driver is here so he can't burn me. Though he probably wouldn't question it if he knew I was quirkless. Father? Where are we going? Deku asked nervously, trying his best to hide his fear. Silly boy, it's a surprise. I'm sure you're going to love it, Hisashi replied lazily, his gaze turning to look at Izuku in the mirror. His eyes glinted with that same foreign light. Nervousness? Anger? Playfulness? Definitely not. Was it excitement? Anticipation? Deku thought so. The son had rarely ever seen his father so jovial, so lively. He didn't know if he liked it. No, scratch that, he did not like it. Not one bit. He thought back to the last time his father had been this excited. His 4th birthday. He seemed so happy for Izuku to get his quirk, only for Deku to disappoint him, the first of many times. That was the first time he felt his father's ire. His rage burned bright and erupted from his mouth, scorching the boy. His hands were fast and fierce, striking the child. It only got worse from there. Day after day, bruise after bruise, burn after burn. Not like I can blame him. Deku thought ashamedly. So no, whatever Hisashi had in store for Deku, he was not looking forward to it. As if on cue, the cab stopped and Hisashi got out. Quickly, Deku gathered his stuff and followed. They had parked in front of an old warehouse, and Hisashi was standing outside, smiling sickly at his son. Once Deku was clear from the vehicle, it drove away, quickly speeding down the street, away from the pair. Come on in. We don't want to keep them waiting, boy. The excitement was evident in his voice, his eyes manic with joy. Who's they? Deku asked carefully, eyes darting between his father and the dark entrance. Oh, just some colleagues. They wanted to meet you and talk. Now come with me inside. At his continued hesitation, his father's gaze hardened, a growl entering his voice. Deku, come with me. Now. All Deku could do was quietly mumble something. What was that, Deku? I've told you not to mumble. Huh. No. Excuse me? You dare defy me? I said get in. Hisashi's voice rose, neck beginning to glow red, flames building within. Deku's brain was screaming at him, telling him to just apologize and obey. But he couldn't. Didn't want to. No. No, I don't want to. Poor they. Why do they want to meet me? Why are you so excited? Welp, no turning back now. Who wouldn't be excited to finally lose some dead weight? Fire flickered around his father's lips, a puff of smoke escaping between his bared teeth. Deku's eyes widened. Dead weight? You mean me? Where am I going? He backed away, every part of him telling him to run. Hell if I care. Now, do as I say. And then Deku ran. Why, you ungrateful brat? Hisashi roared, a burst of flame flying from his open mouth. Deku narrowly dodged the blast and started booking it down the street. He heard his father give chase, formal shoes clicking down the empty road. Thankfully, Deku had plenty of experience with running away from people who wanted to hurt him. I have a decent head start on him, but it won't matter if his quirk hits me. Father's not known for holding back, so he'll probably be doing full blast shots. From what I've seen, there's about a 13-second delay between each shot. Which means 3, 2. Deku dodged to the right, just as a blazing inferno streamed to his left. Once the flames cleared, Deku saw his chance. There was a corner up ahead and he pushed forward, hoping to find a crowd that he could disappear into. 3, 2. As he rounded the bend, he felt a blast of heat rush past his elbow, singeing his uniform. There was no crowd, but there were plenty of shops. Deku ducked into one, frightening the poor clerk. He apologized profusely between pants, then looked around. The shop was quaint and pleasant, pastel blue walls and the sweet smell of cotton candy permeated the room. It was a candy shop. Running from thugs? The clerk asked, a slight frown on her lips. She had pale blonde hair that was separated into 2 braids and decorated with small pink rosettes. Her name tag read Benaira Furiba. A pang of guilt washed over Deku. Oh, I'm so sorry. Why, you probably don't want any trouble. It was stupid of me to come here and drag you into my problems. I should just go. Sorry to cause you true dash, Deku stammered, immediately backing away to the door. Whoa, slow down, kid. Don't worry about it. Here, you can hide in the back, the clerk offered, smiling at the child. And oh, really, it's fine. I shouldn't have bothered you. You don't have to do anything. Nonsense, kid. I can't in good conscience let you out there when there might be thugs looking for you. Here, you can help yourself to something. Deku searched her face for anything. Any sign that she was lying or that it was all a trick. He couldn't see anything. Could she actually be genuine? After all, she didn't know he was quirkless, so it was a possibility. Are you sure? I wouldn't want to impose. Yeah, come on in, she said, unlocking a door behind the counter and stepping aside for him. Thank you so much. Deku entered the small back room. Boxes lined the numerous shelves, some left open on the floor. Inside, Deku could see packages filled with all kinds of candy. There were also some cleaning supplies near the entrance. You can help yourself to something in one of the boxes if you want. Just don't take too much now. Why here? The clerk said with a smile and a wink, moving to lean against one of the shelves. Deku nodded quickly and sat down next to one of the boxes. He didn't dare reach for any candy. He didn't want to give Ms. Furiba any more problems. His heart was still pounding. As he gradually calmed down, the owner spoke up. Most of the gangs around here are pretty sneaky. You must be pretty quick to have gotten away from one of them. Oh, yeah, I guess I've got a lot of experience running, Deku stammered quickly. A quiet conversation picked up, the store owner asking Deku questions and him replying politely. The boy had just managed to calm down when she asked it, the question he'd been dreading. So what's your quirk, kid? Mine is kinda like a mental calculator. I can't do very complex math with it or super fast measurements or anything, but it sure helps with trying to figure out a customer's change. But enough about mine, what's yours? Oh, yeah. You see, I actually, Deku stuttered out, panicking. How would she react? Would she hate him? Probably. Then I'm not going to tell her. Then again, she's been really nice. And she works in a candy shop, so she spends a lot of time with kids. Probably seen a lot of quirks too. Maybe she won't care. Really? I mean, the chances of everyone hating me are small, right? Probability-wise, there are probably a few who don't. Though with your scars you'd never have guessed. I trust her. I'm gonna tell her. Not a single adult in your life has ever cared about you beyond your lack of a quirk. Why do you think she's any different? She's nice, she offered me candy without knowing me, she let me hide here, kid? You okay? The clerk's voice pulled Deku from his thoughts. Oh yeah. I am so sorry for not answering you earlier, I just got lost in thought. The thing is, I don't have a quirk. I'm quirkless. Deku held his breath, biting his lip, and hesitantly looked up at her. Her face was filled with shock, but not for long. Her nose wrinkled. Her open mouth was pulled back into a grimace. Her eyes filled with disgust. Now might be the time to run. W. Get out of my shop. You're not welcome here. Get out before I call the police, she shrieked, backing away from him as if he was some wild animal. Deku flinched at the sound, his eyes watering. He started dashing for the exit. Out with you. You're disgusting. How dare you come in here? I can't believe I wasted my time with you. At those words, she grabbed a bucket from the floor and threw it at him. The metal clanged against his head and fell to the ground. By the time it rolled to a pause, he was already out of the shop and fleeing down the street. His head pounded, and his tears left a trail on the pavement. Once he had gotten far enough away from the shop, Deku finally slowed down. The greenette glanced around cautiously. He was alone in the street. There were a few shops around, but Deku didn't dare try entering one. He knew he'd just have to run away again. Running. Running. You're always running. Running from Kaken. Running from Firmiku and Kojit. Running from father. Running from everyone. Running from the truth. But I'm getting tired. I'm alone. No one wants me. Not even strangers can stand me. You can't keep running without a destination. Pray that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof. If you like thinking about her so much, why don't you go join her in hell? You're just a reminder of her, why don't you go annoy her instead? Hell probably doesn't even want you, but why not go ask? It's better for you to starve than someone who'll actually contribute to society. Just die already, you worthless Deku. I think I know one. A place I can rest. I can't get hurt there. It's bright. The light at the end of the tunnel. It offers a brilliant, blinding release. Then go. You know how people will feel. I just want to help people. It might help them if you were gone. You don't have much going on besides running and getting burned. Maybe it is time to head into the light. Everyone deserves to rest. And then a door slammed open and villains rushed out, carrying boxes and guns. Perfect. Kigo isn't a stalker. He swears on it. So what if he followed a running kid several miles? He was just worried as to why he was crying. Totally wasn't just really bored and making bets on how far the kid could run. It was surprisingly far. Kid must have had an endurance quirk or something of that ilk. No. The winged hero was just doing his job and keeping an eye on the running, crying child to make sure he got home, or at least to a train, safely. But it turned out to be pretty convenient when the building next to the boy was suddenly the victim of villains. Prioritize the rescue. Kigo glanced at the child, preparing to feather lift them away from the crime. But they weren't there. Instead, one of the villains let out a yell of rage, and Kigo heard what sounded disturbingly like a body get thrown into a wall, complete with a yelp of pain. The hero dived down just in time to see the kid stumbling up from the floor while four villains stopped, eyes wide, guns drawn. A truck was parked at the other end of an alley, clearly a getaway vehicle. Bottles rolled along the floor, and a broken crate lay at the feet of the fifth villain who seemed to be nursing a sprained wrist. Some kind of liquid dripped onto the pavement, but it was too dark to make out anything else. Did the kid do that? Not bad, but also, does he have a death wish? Ah shit. It's Hawks. Let's get out of here, one of the guys near the truck yelled, ditching a crate of his own and running. Kigo sent out his feathers, a few to carry the kid out of the alley and down the street, a few to pop the wheels of the truck, and the rest he used to rip the guns out of their hands. As his feathers flew to the wheels, though, an invisible force redirected his feathers into the wall. Coward! We can take this loser. And then we can kill the stupid kid, the injured man yelled, his unbroken hand thrown to the side. So he has some form of telekinesis. Might be a problem. Kigo dived out of the way as one of the assailants launched a barrage of ninja stars at him. That's an awful lot of stars, probably have to watch for a speed quirk. Subtly, as he bobbed and weaved, Kigo released a handful of his feathers up and around the buildings, hoping to use them to catch the villains off guard. Okay, so the remaining villains have strength, self-elasticity, and rock-generating quirks respectively. I can work with this. Once his feathers had gotten into position, he was off. He sent some slithering along the ground to trap the ninja star guy. A few feathers targeted the living slingshot and covered his arms in shallow cuts, making him yelp and fall to the floor, quickly binding him. The rock-making guy was taken aback, and in that moment, Kigo dived and kicked him, knocking him out. The hero leaped back, narrowly avoiding a strike by the strength guy, but before he could knock him down too, he slammed into the ground. Telekinesis guy. All the feathers that weren't connected to him or the ninja star guy formed a shield and blocked the incoming strike from strength guy. He needed more creative names than just quirk guy. With strong man temporarily dealt with, the winged hero turned back to see telekinesis frantically gesturing at him. Kigo tried to jump to his feet but was quickly pulled back down by more than just gravity. He tried standing, his stance wide to keep his balance as his body was pulled every which way. Despite the man's desperate movements, he found that he could slowly rise. His eyes were watering. Okay, so it works best on fast things? Also based on the watery eyes, he's either about to cry or afraid to blink. Wonder if it only works on things he can see. The villain's eyes widened as he saw the hero smirk. The hero sent a handful of feathers, all snaking the ground in different winding directions. The villain moved to spot them, but not before a few wormed up his back and over his eyes. As the villain tried to rip the projectiles off, Kigo turned to the strength villain who was still having trouble getting through his makeshift shield. One flick of the wrist and the feather wall pushed back and covered the villain, roping him up nice and tight. With 4 of the 5 villains immobilized, Kigo turned his attention to the telekinesis guy who was still blindly stumbling around the alley. Suppressing a laugh, the hero swept the guy off his feet and onto his back, where feathers promptly swarmed him. After sending a mark to the police so they could come to collect these guys, Kigo noticed the kid staring wide-eyed at him from the corner. It was the kid who he had stalked followed. "Hey, you okay, kid? Might not have been the best idea to jump into a fight 5v1, the hero said slyly, walking over to the kid. "Why your hawks?" Hisashi let out another roar of frustration, a spire of flame following it upward. He had been searching for this pest all day. It was supposed to be simple, so fucking simple. Bring the deadweight to these men. Trade said deadweight for an assload of money. Never have to waste time or resources on the useless child ever again. He didn't know why these people wanted the quirkless piece of shit, but he wasn't complaining. It was so simple. But of course, Deku just had to mess even that up. No matter. The brat might have been worthless, but the money begged to differ. It was moments like this when he regretted not having a way to track the child. He was about to continue his search when it happened. A small burst of purple smoke appeared in front of him, spiraling wider and wider until it was his height. Hisashi glared at the substance, a sinking feeling entering his gut. The air smelled like ozone. Out walked a relatively short man, with long pale blue hair and covered with gray hands. One even covered his face. The man had his head bowed, the hand covering the rest of his face, but Hisashi had a horrible feeling the man was smiling. "Hisashi Midoriya, right? Where's the loot you promised me?" "You're way past the time limit," the short man said, hints of anger peppering his voice. "Loot? Time limit? Youth these days." Hisashi rolled his eyes. "Look, I don't know what you mean, but I haven't seen you before in my life. Now I have a brat to go look for." The fire breather started walking away, trying to ignore the dark portal that was yet to dissipate. He felt like it was watching him. "I'm not just some NPC you can ignore," the man growled, grabbing Hisashi by the arm but noticeably with only 4 fingers. "I want to talk about our deal. We agreed to a quirkless loser in exchange for cash hours ago. And now I find you lost him. Sensei won't be pleased that you couldn't even complete an escort mission." Hisashi reared, fire flickering in his lungs. "How do you know about that deal? Tell me who you are before I burn it out of you." But before the man could answer, a new voice emerged from the portal, deep and calming. Aochin, sir, pardon young Shigaraki's brashness. We're here on behalf of the man you made a deal with and simply want to know what the delay is. Hisashi whirled at the use of his villain name and stared into the abyss of the portal. Until the portal stared back. Two bright yellow wisps emerged from the smoky mist and looked at him. Too shocked to think of anything else, Hisashi replied honestly. The brat ran off. I've been looking for him, but he's slippery. That is a shame. Perhaps we can discuss an alternative in a more private location? If you'll just step through, the mist replied without missing a beat. And what if I don't want to? Hisashi challenged, eyeing the specter wearily. Because if you don't, you'll end up like him, the first man, Shigaraki, replied, jutting his other hand at a man on the other side of the street. He had electric blue eyes and brown hair, along with a mutation quirk that caused a few barnacle-like shapes to protrude from his milk-white skin at odd locations. One was even right at the top of his head, half covered by a ball cap. In his hands was a phone, clearly filming the whole interaction. Before Hisashi could even process Shigaraki's threat, the man had lunged across the street and grabbed the stranger's face. The boy screamed for a second, the barnacle-like mutations releasing a shrieking cacophony, his hat flying off from the force. But then it stopped. The boy's eyes went from wide and full of fear to gray along with the rest of his face. Then his head. Then his neck and shoulders. The colors spread down his torso and to the rest of his body. Everywhere that turned gray soon turned to ash, flaking into the air. Before even a minute had passed, there was nothing left of the boy but a lone baseball cap and a bag full of groceries. His phone cracked on the pavement, before Shigaraki disintegrated that too. Hisashi suddenly felt very scared and very sick. Well, are you coming? Or are you going to be my next bounty? The murderer said, walking over to his cloudy accomplice, disappearing into the portal without a glance. Hisashi followed, too stunned to do much else. Wire hawks. Now that they two were face to face, Kigo finally got a good look at the kid. He was short, like really short. Probably not even a teenager if his babyish face was any indication. He had dark green hair and eyes and a black school uniform on. Freckles dotted his face and his right hand fidgeted nervously. He was gazing up at the hero with a mixture of wonder and something unclear. That was fear. Definitely fear. What's this kid afraid of? Does he think I'll arrest him for jumping at a villain? I mean, I probably could and maybe should, but nah. Probably should tell him off though. Kigo forced a practiced smile onto his face and crouched down to be more on the kid's level. Hey, how you doing, kid? Does anything hurt? The awe in the child's eyes immediately dulled and his hands stopped fidgeting. Fine. I'm fine. You sure? That sounded like a rough throw. I can take you to a hospital, Kigo offered, trying to be as gentle as he could. He failed. The kid visibly flinched and his eyes darkened. No hospital, the boy stammered, slowly backing away. Seriously? Kigo questioned, shocked. The boy only flinched again. Quickly recovering, the hero calmly said, even if nothing hurts, it still might be better to get a doctor to take a look. You sure you don't want to go to a hospital? The kid only shook his head and started shaking. Okay. No hospital, Kigo said, hands in a placating gesture. In that case, we should probably be getting you home. Another flinch. Can you tell me your address? Another, more violent head shake, tears welling in his eyes. No, it's fine. Really, I can make my own way back. You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. The boy's frantic assurances cut off. His breathing was harsh. His mouth moved but no sound came out. Tears were dripping out of his wide, scared eyes. The kid was most certainly not fine. Please. Don't make me go back, the kid whimpered, shaking violently. Hey, calm down. It's gonna be okay, Kigo said as gently as possible. No one's gonna make you go back. You're safe. Deku blinked up at the pro through tears. He nodded numbly at the hero and they drifted into a tense silence. Meanwhile, his thoughts were raging. Safe? I mean, that makes sense. I'm with Hawks. I can't believe I'm talking to him. Get ready to run again. Why do I need to run? Remember what happened last time you told someone you were quirkless? He could probably arrest you for interfering, maybe even vigilantism. Yeah, maybe, but what if I don't tell him? Sure, what's your plan for when he asks? Deku's thoughts were interrupted by Hawks awkwardly clearing his throat. Shit, I've wasted his time. He's probably got more important things to do. Earth to kid? You've kinda been staring off into space? Hawks questioned, eyes concerned. Oh, I'm sorry. I got lost in thought. You should just go. Please don't. Deku's brain thought traitorously. He didn't know why he wanted the hero to stick around. It would only make things worse when he did eventually find out. It's just because father can't hurt me like this, he reasoned. Yeah, that made sense. Father wouldn't dare attack with a hero present, especially not one so high in the rankings. Nah, my shift's almost over anyway. The police should be here soon to get these guys and you can go with them if you want. They'll take care of you at the station. Don't worry, the hero replied easily. Everything's going to be okay. You're safe. But Deku didn't feel safe. Once the police saw him, he knew it would be over. They'd realize he's quirkless and figure that he deserved whatever was going on at home and send him back there anyway. He hardly even realized that he was shaking and walking backward until his back was against a wall. Hey, breathe. Just breathe, Hawks said, for what felt like the 100th time. He's probably getting tired of your overreacting. I'm sorry, Deku choked out, feeling tears once again dripping down his face. When did I start crying? It's okay. You don't need to apologize, Hawks replied earnestly. I won't make you go with the police, but I promise they won't hurt you. Do you have any friends or family you want to go to instead? Well, there's Aunt Mitsuki. Though, I haven't talked to her much. I've probably made her hate me like Kaken. Deku shook his head, trying to muffle his crying. Kigo was starting to panic. Did this kid really have no one? Grasping at straws he tried. Okay, any teachers or other trusted adults? Regular doctor? Sports coach? Another shake. Bullshit. No to adults, friends, family, police, and even the hospital. Well, it's not like you had many of those growing up either. Thank you, not the point. Suddenly an idea came to him, or more like growled at him. The boy seemed just as surprised at his stomach. Sounds like you're pretty hungry. Why don't we go grab some food and we can figure things out after? The hero said, smiling playfully. I wouldn't want to impose, the kid trailed off. Nonsense. I know this great fast food joint not too far from here if you want to go. Kigo tilted his head. The kid looked at him hesitantly, chewing on his lip. I don't have any money. That's okay, my treat. Slowly, the kid agreed. Kigo smiled and gestured for the kid to follow as he started down the street at a slow pace, making sure the kid could keep up. He steadily got more lost in thought as they walked, but always made sure to keep pace and an eye on the kid. I really shouldn't keep calling him kid. But probably shouldn't randomly come up with nicknames either. I'll figure it out later. Probably should lay off the questions. But what to do with him? My best bet might be to try and convince him to go to the police, but I should have a backup plan. Police, friends, school, family, is there really no one else? Civilians should always be able to look to heroes for help. Yeah, I'm trying my best. It doesn't seem to be good enough. Self-deprecating thoughts and hero aren't going to help this child find a place to stay the night. But what if they did? Think about it. It's not really fair to be looking for alternatives when you haven't even offered all the options on the list. Am I seriously going to ask this scared child if he wants to stay the night at my place? A complete stranger's apartment? He seems to trust you enough to follow you blindly. For all he knows, you might be leading him to the station. And yet he still follows you. Seems plenty trusting to me. Touché. For the rest of the walk, Kigo struggled to find a way to offer without freaking the kid out. They crossed the threshold of the restaurant underneath a bright glowing logo. A few people milled about, but a lot stopped to gawk as Hawk sneered. You shouldn't be so close. If people thought he was with you, it could hurt his career. Or boost it that he was so caring even for a quirkless kid. Don't risk it. Deku Hanbek. Hey the hero replied coolly, nodding his head at the passers-by with a small wave. A few walked up asking for autographs and such or just chatting. Deku stayed at the corner. Maybe I should just go. He probably wouldn't notice or care that much. As if hearing his thoughts, a few crimson feathers floated over slowly and hovered near him. They weren't really blocking him or trying to get him to move, they were just floating there. Like wardens. Like protectors. Deku wasn't sure which interpretation he believed. He glanced over at the hero, who was busy talking to the cashier. Maybe he wouldn't notice if I. Slowly, Deku leaned closer to the feathers and studied them. They looked like normal feathers, except for their coloration obviously. They floated easily, bobbing up and down, and moving his hand around under them, Deku could feel no breeze. Okay, so they do move via some telekinesis, not by moving the air. I wonder how consciously he has to float them. Does he only need to think about moving them, or does he also need to think about keeping them in the air? I wonder if the bobbing is intentional or just part of it. Suddenly, they started moving. Uh-oh, looks like he caught on. You shouldn't have been studying his quirk without his permission. A surge of guilt filled Deku before realizing that the feathers weren't attacking him or even returning to Hawks. They were twirling around him, twisting and spiraling in the air. One even swung at another like a sword, and two feathers started dueling in the air. They clanged against each other like swords. The Greenette watched in wonder at the feathers, mentally taking notes on their abilities. Finally, Deku turned and saw their puppet master. Hawks was grinning at him, a tray of greasy food in hand and an amused light in his eyes. I figured if you were gonna watch my feathers you might as well get a show. I'm sorry for studying them without your permission. I know they're an important part of your quirk, so I shouldn't have Deku stuttered out. Kid, don't worry so much. It's cool, Hawks interrupted, still smiling. Come on, let's go eat. They made their way through the building and over to a table near the corner. I didn't know what you wanted really, so I just kinda splurged. Help yourself to as much as you want. The hero nodded towards all the food on the tray, opening some containers up so Deku could see their contents. Despite the hero's kind offer, he just couldn't help feeling uneasy. Slowly, the Greenette took a few fries, cautiously glancing up at the older man. For the first time since the villain attack, Hawks didn't seem hyper-focused on him. The man was too busy gorging himself on fried chicken and mozzarella sticks. If Deku wasn't so worried about upsetting the man, he might have thought it was odd that a top 20 pro hero would eat so much junk food. You should try the chicken fingers, they're to die for, the hero offered, using a feather to nudge the bucket close to Deku. At his offer, the boy tentatively grabbed one and ate it. It was pretty good. Don't pig out. It might be an act of courtesy, but he's still a hero. Well, he's already bought the food. It's not like I'm taking more of his money. He's a hero, they burn a lot of calories. It looks like he bought half the menu. If he eats this much, he'll probably have bigger problems, like cholesterol and heart issues. With that dilemma settled, Deku let go, just a little bit, and enjoyed some of the food. They didn't talk too much, except for Hawks occasionally recommending things for him to try. The pro hero's mood seemed to brighten steadily throughout the meal, but Deku couldn't figure out why. So, onto the matter at hand, Hawks said, "Where you're going to stay the night." Deku tensed, his flight instinct kicking in. He opened his mouth to assure the hero that he would be fine, but before he could start, Hawks continued. "I promise you'll be safe with the police and that they'll take care of you." Deku flinched. "But if you really don't feel safe there, I have a spare room that you're welcome to." What? Deku couldn't process what he'd heard. The hero was smiling at him with such kindness and sincerity it didn't feel real. No, this can't be real. There has to be a catch. He can't genuinely think that I deserve that, right? What? I don't mean to be rude, Hawk sir, but Deku spluttered. He almost just went and said that he was quirkless right there, but he didn't. He didn't know why. Hawks deserved the truth. He deserved to know what a mistake this was. But Deku didn't tell him. Are you sure? He finally managed, still in shock. Sure kid, you need a place to stay and I promise you'll be safe. After a few more tense moments, Deku nodded. The duo finally made it back to Kigo's apartment. The train had been a little awkward, what with his large wings and having to explain to passengers why a small child was hiding behind them. I mean, technically it wasn't a lie. He just said he was taking the kid home. Didn't say whose. Kigo hummed to himself in amusement as he climbed the stairs to his apartment. Giving the kid, still stuck on how to ask for his name? Shut up brain. As encouraging of a smile as he could manage, he unlocked the door and let the kid walk in. The apartment wasn't much, but most of it was big enough for him to walk around with his wings comfortably, so it was good enough for him. A single step down to the left sectioned off the living room, which had a TV and some couches. A hallway behind those led off to his room, the bathroom, and the spare room. Directly in front of the front door, there was a path with a kitchen and table to the right. There wasn't a wall separating the living room and the kitchen, so the whole area was very open, giving plenty of space for his wings. The walls were noticeably bare. The HC has got me on such a busy patrol I haven't even been able to think much about decorations. How am I supposed to take care of a kid? Great job, genius. Hopefully, he'll be more open to the police tomorrow. Kigo glanced down at the kid, trying to gauge his reaction. He was glancing around nervously as if expecting someone to jump out at him. After a moment, he turned to look at the hero. It's nice. Kigo smiled. Yeah, it's not much, but it's home. The word almost stuck in his throat. Was this home? It's where I come back to every day, sure, but home? Hey genius, focus on the child you just kidnapped. The thought snapped him out of his stupor as the kid started making his way inside. The spare room and bathroom are down that hallway, and if you get hungry, you can help yourself to anything in the kitchen. The green-haired child nodded quickly. Also, I'm open to talk if you never need to, Kay? The kid's eyes filled with something unreadable before nodding and bowing deeply. Thank you, Hawks, sir. Kigo smiled and nodded to the boy. He seems to have calmed down at least. Shit, hope I'm doing this right. Hours passed. The sun had long since set. Kigo had just quietly walked into the hall when he saw it. The kid's door was wide open. He glanced at the bathroom, it was empty. The rest of the apartment was also dark. Shit, did the kid run away? He crossed the hallway, peeking into the spare room as he passed. The kid hadn't run away. Instead, he was curled up on the floor, content to sleep on the wood. The bed lay untouched, covers pulled up and pillow tucked. The desk was also unchanged. The child's backpack lay on the floor, a few notebooks exposed. One was even left open with a pencil abandoned near it. Did this child hear, spare room, and think I meant the floor? Cammy, what have people done to you? As gently as he could, Kigo sent a few feathers along the floor. A few pulled back the covers, while the rest positioned themselves around the child. Upon his command, the feathers carefully lifted the boy, as slowly as possible to not wake him. They airlifted the child and set him down on the bed. The covers blanketed him and Kigo smiled. He exited the room, closed the door quietly, and went to bed himself. Hisashi unceremoniously dropped from the sky. The meeting had lasted hours, and this sensei was none too pleased when he'd heard about his thug's failure earlier that night. It didn't help when he heard about a certain green-haired boy apparently leading Hawks to the scene. Hisashi dusted himself off, retiring his search for the night. Tomorrow was a new day with a new mission. Kill Izuku Midoriya. Deku's sleep was rarely free of nightmares. Fire, explosions, falls, and venomous words danced beneath his eyelids. He awoke in tears, a loud sob ripped from his throat. His mouth snapped shut. No matter how many times the nightmares repeated, they never got any easier. Clamping his hand over his mouth, Deku wept silently, shaking on the bed. I don't have Eep. Footsteps echoed down the hall, and a knock echoed through the room. But he doesn't. Kid? You okay? A gentle voice said. Yesterday's events suddenly hit Deku like a freight train, and he suddenly felt very, very sick. His father had tried to abandon him. He'd almost gotten killed. He'd met Hawks. What do I do? If I go back home, Father might just try to get rid of me again. I don't want to be sold. Where can I hide? Would Venus hide me? No, even if you found him, no way he'd agree. Kaken? It's been a while since I talked to Aunt Mitsuki. Do you really want to live in the same house as Kaken? Alright. Before he could panic any further, the voice interrupted his thoughts. Kid? I can hear you hyperventilating. Can I come in? Deku didn't even notice his heavy breathing. Shit, did I wake Hawks up? He's going to kill me. Well, maybe not kill. He's still waiting for your answer, idiot. Oh, I'm fine. Just a nightmare is all. Sorry if I woke you up. Please don't be mad, please don't be mad, please don't be mad, please don't bem. It's okay. If you're sure, I'll go start breakfast, K? Hawks replied, but sounded a bit uneasy. He doesn't sound mad. Wait, breakfast? Why you don't need to do that? Actually, I probably shouldn't stay long, Deku replied, scrambling to his feet. He slid the door open, startling the winged man. Wait, you're leaving? He sounded surprised and maybe a little sad. You shouldn't leave on an empty stomach. Really, it's no trouble. Deku's stomach chose that moment to growl. The boy glared down. You really have the worst timing, you know that, right? Seemingly satisfied, Hawks grinned and left to go prepare food. His heart was still racing, though it was slowing down. Sighing in defeat, he slid the door closed. Glimpses of the nightmare flew through his mind. Screwing his eyes shut, Deku shook his head and tried to steady his breathing. Glancing around the room, he took it in. It was simple. A desk stood in the corner and next to it was the bed. His notebooks and backpack were lying on the floor, number 6 still open. The walls remained bare. Of course they're bare, it's a guest room. Slowly, Deku packed up his books, settling them against his textbooks. Books that you borrowed from your school. A school you can't return to. You practically stole them. Shutting out the thoughts, Deku turned towards the door. He felt calm. It was nice here. Too bad he couldn't stay. He probably wouldn't want you to. He's a pro hero, he's got more important things to do than look after a kid. Exiting the room, he heard Hawks greet him. The man was busy at the stove, scrambling eggs. A few slices of toast were waiting on the table. There were even a few leftovers from last night. A coffee pot and carton of milk were there too. Slowly, Deku slid into a chair and awkwardly waited. A few moments later, Kigo brought over 2 plates, yellow eggs clumping together on each. I'm not a very good cook, but I promise it's edible. Not even I can mess up scrambled eggs and toast too badly, Hawks joked, taking his seat and sliding a plate to Deku. No, I'm sure you're great. It looks really good, Deku assured, grabbing a fork and starting to eat. Hawks's grin grew, becoming a bit more genuine. After a few minutes of eating in silence, Hawks started. So, you figured out a place to go? I don't have to work for an hour or 2 so I can make sure you get there safely. Oh, and no. I don't know where I'm going, but I don't want to keep bothering you. Deku blurted it out without thinking. Hawks looked taken aback. Okay, you're not a bother. You can stay as long as you want. Now it was Deku's turn to be surprised. No, really it's fine. I can find somewhere else. You probably have more important things to do anyway. I insist. I don't feel too comfortable with you running around the streets on your own anyway, Hawks admitted, golden eyes looking kindly at Deku. The boy looked away, chewing his lip. Hawks broke the silence. How about this, until you figure out where you want to go, you stay here. I promise I'll take good care of you and that it's safe. Deku searched his eyes for anything, any hint of a lie or other intention. Does this adult, this pro-hero, really just want him to be safe? The idea was so foreign. Deku couldn't recall anyone looking at him that way since he was 4. It's just because he doesn't know you're quirkless. Just wait till he finds out about that. Hesitantly, he nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders as a new one tumbled on. Time to see how well he could keep a secret. How long he could keep up this charade. Or how fast you can find a non-suspicious way to leave. I don't have anywhere else to go. I'm gonna stay as long as I can. Good luck with that, be ready to run. Thank you, Hawks, sir. I will try to not be a nuisance, Deku said, bowing as best he could in the chair. Don't worry about that, kid. Just try to relax. Make yourself at home, just nothing too crazy, K? Hawks replied with a wink. Also the name's Kigo Takami, you can drop the Hawks, and, sir. Just call me Kigo. Deku couldn't keep the shock off his face. If a human could blue screen, he just did. The number 12 pro hero just said he could call him by his given name. Oh, okay. Kigo. My name's Izuku. Kigo beamed at the kid, Izuku in front of him. He seemed a lot more lively than yesterday and the hero couldn't be happier. Nice to know you, Izuku. The greenette smiled weakly back at him. They sat in silence for a bit. It wasn't specifically awkward or comfortable, it was just silence. Sadly, Kigo had to break it. So, before I go, I just have to check. How old are you? I'm 12, Izuku stuttered. Okay, you should be fine. I can trust you not to burn the place down or anything, right? He joked. The boy nodded frantically. I should be back around noon so we can go grab lunch then. Okay. Thank you again. No prob. Aside from the obvious, you can do what you want here. Watch TV, grab a snack, the works. If you go out, just be careful, follow laws and roads and normal stuff. Sound good? Why yeah, Izuku affirmed, though he still sounded a bit nervous. He's still tense. I mean, we are still basically strangers. While we've still got some time, why not some icebreakers? Kigo suggested. The kid shrugged. Okay, keep them light and simple, nothing prying. I'm trying to get his trust, not interrogate him. Let's start easy. Do you have a favorite hero? Kigo could see the exact moment light flooded the kid's eyes. All Might. Though Eraserhead is also awesome, and Edgeshot's quirk is really versatile and interesting. So is yours and 13th's. Ingenium is really strong and brave too. Oh, I'm rambling again, sorry. I just really like heroes and quirks. That was the most the kid had talked yet. Wait, did he even take a breath during that? Nah, you're fine. It's good to know a lot. I don't think I've even heard of a few of them. Some of the tension melted from Izuku's shoulders and he gave him a weak smile. If I had to say a favorite, mine might be Endeavor. The boy nodded understandingly, then bit his lip. Things went like that for a while, Kigo asking a question and then he and Izuku answering. It was fun, and by the time Kigo had to go to work, Izuku was smiling and seemed to be comfortable. Well, I've got to go change. Nice to get to know you, Izuku, Kigo said, standing. I'll see you at noon, K? My number's on the fridge if you need anything. All right. Later, as the hero was leaving the house, he hesitated. A single feather left his wings and floated over to a corner near the front door. Just to keep an ear out in case something happens. The front door shut. Izuku was alone. He was still smiling from his talk with Kigo, feeling more content than he had in a long time. It won't last. How long do you think you can keep up this lie? Maybe if we become friends he won't care? 'Cause that worked so great with Kaken. Face it, once he asks what your quirk is, it's over. But he hasn't asked yet, isn't that evidence that he won't care? He doesn't care yet because he assumes you have one. Izuku sat like that, debating himself, but eventually accepted the truth. This was temporary, Kigo's kindness wouldn't last. An odd sadness flooded his senses. The smile dripped from his face and onto his hand. More soon followed, sliding down his face. Tears? It's been one day and you're already attached to him. Are you asking to be hurt again? Stop, don't think about that now. Kigo said you could do anything within reason, that includes analysis, right? Every other person has called that creepy or stalkerish. You sure that's appropriate? Shaking himself, Izuku stood and walked to the couch. He flicked the TV on and turned to the channel he'd watched during the moments when father wasn't home. The news. Once upon a time, these stolen minutes were his sanctuary, the only times he could drop his mask and relax. Only later would he realize, he forgot to wear one with Kigo. They were reporting on incidents from last night along with other new cases. A few had footage of heroes involved, some only a few images. It steadily turned more mundane, hero news replaced with reports on policies or companies. When it turned to the weather, Izuku officially lost interest and went and grabbed his backpack, setting it next to him on the couch. Sliding out his textbooks, he started on yesterday's homework. Why am I doing this? I'm not going back there. He thought absently, still doing the work. The problems bled away, coming and going as quickly as cars on the street. The TV was playing absently in the background. A few hours passed. Then dramatic music started and Izuku's eyes were torn to the report. Breaking news. Villain Medusa holds hostages in bank. We have just received reports on a villain attack in downtown Musutafa. A villain who goes by the moniker of Medusa has taken several hostages and is currently in a standoff with the police who have surrounded the block. No heroes have arrived on the scene yet. We have reporter Kiero Rian there now. Thanks. I'm outside the building right now, which is the district's bank. Medusa has barricaded herself inside using what seems to be a stack of mannequins. It's unclear why the police are yet to take action and instead are waiting for a hero's arrival. Wait, I see one now. It's Mirko. She's just landed and is talking to the head officer right now. Let's see if we can get closer. As the reporter moved closer, Izuku kept gazing at the screen. Medusa, he knew her. She was friends with his father. Those weren't mannequins barricading the doors and windows, they were people. Being bitten by her turned your skin hard as stone, but thankfully only for a while. He knew from experience. Depressing memories aside, it was Mirko. She was so cool. Izuku grabbed his notebook and flipped to the heroine section. Let's hope she's smart enough to not try to kick through the barricade, that would get messy. He started analyzing her along with ideas for how she could get in and subdue Medusa. Well, it's unlikely that Medusa had enough people to cover all the windows and entrances, it's likely there are a few she had to leave open. Along with this, there definitely aren't enough people to line against all of the walls. The police and Mirko might not be able to go through most of the windows and doors, but busting through a section of the wall or ceiling would likely be very safe. If you can't go through, go around. Infiltrating the bank shouldn't be too much of an issue. As for fighting Medusa, she's decent in melee but heavily reliant on her quirk. She focuses on getting a bite in and winning fast, not prepared for an endurance fight. While Mirko specializes in close combat, there should be plenty of things inside that she can throw or kick at Medusa. Banks have couches, right? Throwing one of those at Medusa would likely finish the fight really fast. That's assuming Mirko knows her quirk though, but even if she does just rush in and kick Medusa, she'd likely be fine. There's only so hard Medusa can bite and it likely wouldn't be enough to get through Mirko's leg guards. Even so, should Mirko aim anywhere but the mouth, there's nothing Medusa can do. All in all, Medusa's only hope is that she can either bite through Mirko's leg guards or that Mirko tries to punch her in the mouth. Vaguely, Izuku glanced up at the TV only to see Mirko on the move. With one giant leap, she soared to the top of the bank. The camera couldn't see what was going on, but the boy could guess. A crack sounded from the roof and after a few minutes, the bodies piled up against the front started being carefully removed one at a time. The police rushed to help and before long, they were carrying Medusa away from the scene, a bruise forming on her forehead. Izuku cheered and smiled and returned to writing in his notebook any extra details he gathered about Mirko. Unknown to him, a bright red feather had appeared on the back of the couch near his head. When Kigo heard the dull murmur through his feather, he was a bit surprised. It didn't sound like the TV that had been playing, it was much too human. Was it Izuku? Was he talking? Or muttering? Landing on a roof, Kigo reached his senses for the feather. He gestured it closer to the sound, setting it behind the boy, and feeling the vibrations. He could by no means understand the words being spoken but felt the sound waves bouncing off the feather. There was no frantic edge to the words, they were fast and focused but not distressed. There were two other sources, one being the TV, and another a quiet scratching sound. Writing perhaps? Write those notebooks. Wonder what he's doing. He felt his phone vibrate and glanced at the notification. Right as he read the headline about Mirko's victory, he felt a papery clap. A book closing. Izuku did say he liked heroes. Wonder if he was writing about the live report. Kigo smiled and looked at the time, 11:26 a.m. I guess I'll ask when I get back. Don't want to make it seem like I was stalking though. But you basically are, aren't you? Shut up, brain. Kigo opened the door to his apartment and called out a greeting to Izuku. The boy looked up from the TV and quickly greeted him back. They discussed food plans and decided on a cafe down the street. They exited and ordered and returned to the apartment. Izuku spent the walk glancing around nervously. As they ate their food, Kigo asked, "So, how was your morning?" "Oh, gee good. I did some homework, but I mostly just watched the news though. I hope that was okay." A hint of panic bled into Izuku's voice. "Yeah, of course. Anything interesting happen?" Well, there was a villain attack but Mirko handled it. It was against Medusa at a bank." Kigo nodded while chewing the sandwich. How was your patrol?" "Wait, that probably isn't okay to ask, I'm just a civilian." "You don't have to answer." Kigo chuckled. "No need to worry, nothing special happened. Arrested a few thugs, saved a dog, talked to a few officers, nothing big." "That's still really cool." I'm sure it meant a lot to those people, Izuku exclaimed. The hero was a bit surprised at the boy's excitement. Kigo smiled and they continued amicably chatting. Before long, both were finished and it was time for Kigo to go again. Hey, you said your favorite food was katsudon, right? Kigo asked, remembering their conversation that morning. Punto. Great, I'll pick some up on my way back. You want any dash? But Kigo was cut off by a surprised yelp. What? You don't have to do that. Really? Izuku stammered, hands waving hurriedly. Nah, we got my favorite last night, we'll get yours tonight. It's been a while since I've had it anyway. You want anything else while I'm out? I'll probably stop by a convenience store. Izuku still looked unsure but at least seemed to accept the dinner plans. Hesitantly, Izuku opened and shut his mouth. He seemed to be having an internal argument. Kigo stood patiently, smiling steadily and kindly. If it's not too much trouble, the boy choked out, see, could I get a notebook? You can say no. Sorry, I know dash, the hero cut off the rest of the apology. Sure, I'll pick some up. The kid looked at him in shock, a smile slowly spreading across his face. Thank you. Just as he promised, Kigo returned that evening with 2 bowls of katsudon and 3 notebooks. 2 were similar designs to notebooks 5 and 6 with simple campos covers. The third, however, had a laminated All Might cover. Izuku almost cried when he saw it. Are those all for me? Kigo nodded. Yeah, these dash waves, the 2 campos books, were similar to some of your other ones, but I saw the All Might one my way out and thought, why not? Thank you so much. You didn't have to get me so many, one would have been just fine. And not that I'm ungrateful. Just a little overwhelmed. Izuku rushed, eyes watering. No problem, kid. Glad you like him. Come on, let's go eat. Kigo beamed, then started towards the kitchen. The katsudon was delicious, hearty, and warm. They chatted and Kigo even got a light laugh out of Izuku. After finishing the dishes, they both made their way over to the TV to relax. The reporter was rambling something about politics or rankings when Kigo piped up. So, what are the notebooks for anyway? Izuku froze and glanced at the hero. He was smiling at him with curiosity. How long will that last? Everyone else calls them creepy. Logically, he probably would too. I mean, how would you feel if some random person overthought everything about your quirk? Nothing. Just a dumb hobby. Come on. I promise I won't judge, Kigo pressed, hands held in surrender. Well, he has let us stay with him. He probably deserves to know anyway. I suppose it won't change much. Father couldn't even stop you, and if Kigo is on patrol most days, he can't stop you either. Why, you sure? It's kind of creepy. Yeah. I'm curious. The hero was still smiling. Okay. I've always really liked quirks and heroes, so I just started doing little analyses of them and writing things I found cool about them. I can't do it too much because... Izuku trailed off. But yeah, I put them in notebooks and I kinda ran out of space in number 6s, so I needed some more. Izuku chewed his lip, glancing at Kigo's widened eyes. Ooh, that's so cool. You mind if I take a look? There was something in his voice. Suspicion? Anger? No, unless it's really well hidden. Wonder? Sounded like it. He's not creeped out? That's a first. Though it's probably because he doesn't know you're quirkless yet, or the full extent of the analysis. Really? Sure. Do you want to see your page? Izuku mumbled, reaching for Journal 6. You did one on me? Heck yeah. I'm honored, the hero replied excitedly, bouncing a bit. The boy handed the open book to Kigo, head ducked. Was that a good idea? Kigo thought he knew what to expect when he took the book. He was a bit taken aback when the kid described it as creepy, but a little analysis seemed innocent enough. He thought it would just be a description of his quirk along with maybe his special moves. And it was. And also so much more. The left page had a detailed drawing of him with labeled points of his costume. Below was an in-depth analysis of his quirk along with random theories or questions about it. The right page had pictures of his different feathers across the top along with each of their uses and abilities, also with their own slew of questions. Below were descriptions and questions about his super moves and even the instances where he used each. Kigo could feel his eyes widening and jaw slackening. Looks like I underestimated this kid. He's really observant, creative too. Hesitantly, he flipped the page to see it was continued. The left detailed several strengths of his and a list of weaknesses too. He scanned those and realized that they were scarily accurate. He could probably kill you at any time he wanted, even if you didn't literally invite him to your house. Oh. I really hope he's not secretly a villain. I was starting to like him. He's so young, doubt he's gone full villain. However, if he was abused, he might be pushed down that route. It's up to you to get this kid to not turn to evil. And how am I supposed to do that? Be a good person, jackass. And keep him safe. Show you genuinely care and it'll hopefully be good enough. Kigo snapped his attention back to the pages. The right talked about his personality, motives, and his typical patrol routes. Finally, there was an analysis that detailed several ideas for improvements. Kigo paid extra attention to those and mentally recorded them to ponder that night. Turning to the next page, he saw it detailed another newer hero, Death Arms. Wow, if he goes villain he can probably take out any hero he wants. Returning to his own pages, Kigo scanned the brilliant analysis again. Then he turned his gaze to the writer of said brilliant analysis. So yes, he was a little creeped out. This small, baby-faced child was smart enough to come up with several ways to take out the top 12 hero. He didn't even notice his jaw was hanging open until he started talking. Dang kid, this is really in-depth. You have a real talent for analysis. I'm impressed. Kigo forced a smile onto his face, a little wary, but he was never one to let fear cloud his mind. This is still the same sweet kid I met yesterday. Oh, it's really nothing special, Izuku rushed, looking down. What do you mean? You could help a lot of people with a brain like that. Strategy, observation, and being able to point out weaknesses can get you pretty far. Heck, you're probably a better analyst than most pro heroes. Seriously? I'm really not that good. I just see things and like to make connections. Anyone could do it. And probably better. Kigo leaned forward and smiled brightly at the child. I doubt that. Then an idea popped into his head. His agency had been having some trouble finding a pair of criminals. They had destroyed several cameras but missed one that was across the street. There wasn't much info about them and their quirks weren't matching with any from any database. He explained this to the kid and asked if he wanted to give it a peek. Izuku thought for a moment before hesitantly nodding. I probably can't help it all. But if I can, I want to help people. I mean, that's kinda why I started doing these. To help people. Izuku looked at Kigo as the hero led him to the computer. His eyes were filled with hesitation, hope, and light. No way this kid would go villain, not with that heart and motivation. The screen flicked on. The camera was looking from the opposite street into an alley. A door off to the side led into one of the buildings. Two figures walked into view. A man and a woman. The man was tall and bulky, the woman shorter and leaner. Very stereotypical. The taller, bulkier one let out a yell as their accomplice shifted. Several pin-sized projectiles flew from their mouth and pierced another camera looking into the alley. The door rattled with the force. With the camera destroyed, the shorter villain walked over to the door and a terrible creaking sound reverberated. The door swung wide, its locking mechanism ripped and exposed. The pair entered the building. Several images came up. One showed the destroyed camera. Another showed the door with its lock torn and mangled. The third showed an overall picture of the alley. Izuku saw all of this and immediately knew something was up. Things didn't add up. Kigo was standing next to him, frowning with eyes narrowed at the screen. It looked like the big villain used pin missiles to destroy the camera, but the close-up picture shows a single larger hole. Based on the directions of the pins, no way they all would have hit one spot. Several should have hit the surrounding wall, but there wasn't any evidence of that in the pictures. A single pin couldn't have made such a big hole anyway. Rewinding the footage, Izuku played that moment in slow motion, completely oblivious to his muttering. He was also completely oblivious to Kigo looking at him, clearly surprised. While the big guy yelled and shot the missiles, his partner shifted so her hand wasn't visible to this camera. The door to the right also shuddered even though his scream or pins shouldn't have been strong enough to do that. Wait, what was that? Izuku rewound it a little more, before playing the footage frame by frame. The door seemed to swing open a bit, and for a single frame you could see a scrap of metal fall before vanishing and the door shuttering closed. Focusing on the woman, Izuku saw one of her hands peeking out behind her elbow. The index finger and thumb were fully extended. Finger guns. Of course, the man didn't destroy the camera at all. His partner did. Turning to the pictures again, he focused on the one showing the broken door. He zoomed in as much as he could on the handle. Near the base of the handle was a single detail easily overlooked. A hole. A hole leading directly to the locking mechanism, with its torn metal. A bullet hole. The woman has some sort of bullet quirk. Her partner was the distraction, using his quirk, possibly illusory, to make it seem like he destroyed the camera and she had super strength where in actuality she used bullets to destroy both. With such a big show he did, it was easy for her to pass under the radar. They purposefully misled the investigation. That makes even more sense considering that they left this camera alive but found and destroyed the others before they were even seen. That could be attributed to an illusion quirk too, hiding until they destroyed the camera. Izuku switched tabs to the police database that Kigo had open. He ignored the front page, including an article about the angry fire-breather villain, Aochin. But he was completely lost in the moment. Izuku searched for female villains with bullet quirks and male villains with illusion quirks, possibly activated through yelling. Before long he had two potential answers. A water jet user, Mizuju. The illusionary one, Buranku Enkiai. Izuku looked up at Kigo ready to report only to see the hero, mouth slightly agape, clearly surprised. Only then did Izuku realize he'd illegally searched through the police archives. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know I wasn't supposed to search the database. I just got lost in the moment. His frantic apology was cut off by Kigo resting his hand on his shoulder. Dude, don't worry about it. In just 3 minutes, you did more for this case than professionals in 3 weeks. No one's gonna be mad at you for that. Speaking of, that was awesome. I never even noticed the hole on the door. No one did. Izuku was shocked, then flushed in embarrassment. No, really it was just luck. It's an easy thing to miss. And wait, how did you know I found it? Was I mumbling again? Sorry. Kigo just smiled down at him, ruffling his hair affectionately. Izuku, you don't need to apologize for anything. It was cool watching you work. And here's the deal, I don't tell the police you looked through their database, and you don't tell them I showed you a civilian, classified footage. Deal? The hero said with a wink. Izuku nodded, calming down. I'm gonna let the police know what we found and clarify that it is them. This might take a while, so I probably won't see you till the morning, K? Kigo was still smiling at him. Okay. Thanks for the chance. Good night, Kigo. No, thank you. Even if it isn't these two, you showed us a lot of clues and a good direction to look at. Great job, Izuku, you should be proud. Good night, the hero waved. Izuku was stunned before a small smile creased his mouth. He was proud. When Kigo next left his room, the sky was dark. He trudged over to the kitchen but stopped. The TV was still on, and Izuku had fallen asleep in front of it. The hero smiled fondly at him. Before long, Feathers carried the kid off to his room and shut the door. Kigo let out a yawn and set the plate of eggs on the table. He glanced over at Izuku's room when he heard the door open. The boy walked out, still shaking a little bit, eyes red and puffy, still wearing the uniform that he had worn since the day they met. Shit, he doesn't have any other clothes, does he? Kigo sent some feathers to his room. Soon they returned with an old t-shirt and a box of tissues. Setting both on the table, Kigo apologized. Sorry about that, I don't know how I forgot you didn't have other clothes. We can go shopping for some more later. And no, it's okay. You don't have to spend more money on me, Izuku sniffled. Kigo frowned. Just like his first nightmare, Kigo had gone to help but Izuku just assured him he was fine and pushed him off. Izuku, I'm a pro hero. I've got the money. Don't worry about it, he said, smiling at him comfortingly. The kid didn't look convinced. I promised I'd take good care of you, didn't I? Leaving you to wear the same thing every day isn't very responsible. Meeting his eyes, Izuku slowly agreed. Frowning, Kigo took a sip from his coffee, thinking, what about this? The boy started. I don't know why you like them so much, B, but if you wanted, I could analyze things and situations for you. If you want. I completely understand, if you don't want me to. I know that. The kid trailed off. Kigo's eyes widened. Oh, this pure child. Really? That'd be awesome. You have a real skill at it. I'll happily take you on. He started reaching his hand forward but then stopped. I just want to make it clear, you are by no means obligated to do this. Whether you analyze or not, I'm still going to try to take care of you, okay? You don't need to do this, and if you ever don't want to, I'm not going to make you, okay? And you can back out anytime you want. I don't want to take advantage of you. Deal? Izuku gaped, clearly surprised. After a moment, he shook Kigo's hand and smiled. Deal. The day continued largely similar to yesterday. They chatted, finished breakfast, and the time came for Kigo to patrol. Izuku sat up on the couch and waved him goodbye. Kigo had flown around the town for the first hours, listening to the low rumble of Izuku's mumbling. Eventually, the hero decided to land and walk around. He greeted pedestrians, signed a few autographs, and even caught a burglar on their way out of a store. Turning a corner, he saw a sign stapled to a post. Missing. Nyoroiterako. Quirk. Whale song. The mutations covering his body can each release a different pitch at will. Last seen 8/23/23XX. If you have any information on his whereabouts, please call 9035550202 and ask for Ashuro Tarako or the police. Below the name was a picture of a young man covered in barnacle-like protrusions. He was pale with bright blue eyes, brown hair covering his head. It was clearly not Izuku, but Hawks couldn't help but panic a bit. If his parent or someone else does submit a missing person report, it is technically my job to inform them and bring Izuku in. The only way around that is to present suspicions or evidence of abuse or some other reason to not hand Izuku over. Until then, you literally kidnapped him. I'm to know about kidnapped. You lured a child away with food and then took them home with you. The only part that doesn't scream kidnapper is the fact he seems to like staying with you. Okay, back on topic. I should talk to him, get his story, and ask why he doesn't want to go home. Cammy, that's not going to be a fun conversation. Better sooner than later though. Maybe it isn't so bad. Wait, don't the police sometimes put missing person reports on TV? Shit. Flying up to a roof so that he can have some privacy, Kigo called up a friend, one Detective Tsukachi. Pucks. Perfect timing, I was just going to call you. You were spot on with your idea last night. We got both of them and retrieved the stolen weapons. Oh, that's great, Detective. Though I can't take full credit. I got help from a friend. You went through the proper channels to get their help, right? Seriously? Fine. I'm just going to pretend I never heard that. Can you bring them by the station later? I'd like to meet them. No, they're not in trouble. I mean, I can ask? No promises though. But actually, that's kinda what I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, go ahead. So, hypothetically, if a missing persons case came up for them but they really didn't want to go to the police, what should I do? Hawks, what the hell? Did you kidnap someone? Define kidnap. They came with me willingly, and I know you know that's true. They can also leave at any time they want, but since they're so young, I don't feel comfortable ditching them on the street. Hawks, how old are they? 12. Okay, so walk me through everything. Because unless I hear a good reason, I am going to your house and finding this child you kidnapped. Kigo walked him through what had happened since he met Izuku and his suspicions about Izuku's abuse. He left out the details of the analysis. So, the child you stalked turned out to be running away and you decided to take them home since you couldn't safely take them anywhere else? Yes? Kemi. Okay, do you have their names so I can see if there is a missing persons case submitted? Izuku. I don't know his last name. So there aren't any yet, but his parents might just be holding out hope. Or if he really was abused, then it might be neglect. I'll let you know if one comes in with his description. Do you know his quirk? He hasn't mentioned it yet even though he loves them. It might be some form of analysis. I'm a bit hesitant to ask though, I've just got a bad feeling about how he'd react. I'll keep you informed, but try to get him to open up and bring him in. You guys can ask for me directly. I won't say anything to anyone, but don't make a habit of picking up children off the street. I wish you guys the best, especially the kid. Take care of him. Thank you so much, detective. I'll talk to him later. Wait, what are you doing for school? The kid is 12. He's been doing some schoolwork with his textbooks, but I don't know how much. I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. Oops. Geez, okay, well, the faster we get this wrapped up, the better. Or you could try online schooling. I'll probably have to get him a computer for that. Wait, I don't think he even has a phone. Wait, you showed those case files to a child. Plus, oh, look at the time, I gotta get back to patrol. Plus, with the call with Tsukachi over, Kigo slumped on the roof. Things to do. Get Izuku a laptop, phone, and a new wardrobe. Gain as much trust as I can. Have a very, very hard conversation. He groaned as he checked the time. Still a few hours until his lunch break. After a moment, the hero got up and started flying. He started making his way to his apartment, eyes glued to the street but his mind on the coming days. It took a bit, but Izuku finally accepted Kigo's idea. He came back that night with a small wardrobe, a few pencils, a new laptop, a phone, and a case. Izuku was still thanking the hero, overwhelmed by the kindness. Kigo simply ruffled his hair and took a seat on the couch. It had been years since Izuku had a phone. Venus had gotten him one for his birthday, but when Kaken broke it after a week, his father forbade him from having one again. The mark on his shoulder blade throbbed at the memory. Pulling himself out of the memories, Izuku carefully took the phone out and started setting it up. He didn't notice Kigo nervously glancing at the TV before turning it on. The night continued like that. Izuku finished setting up his new tech and exchanged numbers with Kigo. So, do you have anything you want me to analyze? Despite their deal that morning, Kigo looked a little surprised. Oh, right about that. I probably shouldn't just keep showing you things. We need things to be at least a little legal. So, what if I hired you as a freelancer? I can't legally give you a position at my agency since you're a minor, but if you worked as a freelance analyst it would all work out. You'd even get paid. Hired? Are you sure? I mean, I want to help, and also don't want you to get in trouble, but do you really want that? Izuku squeaked out, hardly believing his ears. Heck yeah. You're awesome. We've been needing an analyst anyway. And this way, you could help multiple heroes and agencies, not just mine. So, what do you say? You want a job? Kigo spread his wings out, hand outstretched. Izuku looked at the hand. Am I really that good? Does Kigo actually think that highly of me? Have I tricked him into thinking I'm not useless? He appears to. You did solve the case from last night. He may have said we don't need to do this, but he wouldn't be the first person to lie. Maybe if I can be useful to him, he won't have any reason to get rid of me. He'd let me stay, even when he finds out I'm quirkless. Maybe so, hard to predict. This is a new situation. I don't want to go back to being hated and burned. I don't want that. I don't think I'd survive. Whatever chance I have to stay here, I have to take it. Plus, I can help people. Deal. Kigo beamed and Izuku tried to return the smile. They spent the rest of the night working out the details and how Izuku would get paid, no matter how many times he tried to deny it. The topic of school stayed unmentioned by either. Izuku fell asleep that day, comfortable, content, and safe. Before he had another nightmare, of course. 5 days later. In the coming days, Izuku felt safer and safer. By day he'd analyze both heroes and villains for agencies, and in the evening he and Kigo would relax and joke around. He still wasn't sure why the heroes valued his observations so much, but they seemed to help, and who was Izuku to complain? Kigo had blissfully not asked about his quirk yet, saving Izuku from having to come up with something. He probably just assumes you have an analysis quirk. Yet even as each day came and passed, Izuku couldn't help but fear it was all some elaborate joke. A twisted prank designed for the amusement of others. It just took one thing to make it all come crashing down, leaving him alone. Just waiting for his lie to come out. Just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then it did. Izuku was finishing up some work for Fat Gum's agency. Kigo was nearby on his phone while the TV played in the background. It was comfortable. Kigo chuckled. Hey look, you're on TV. Izuku glanced up and saw his own face looking back at him. It was a missing person report. Missing, Izuku Midoriya. Last scene 8/23/23XX. Quirkless. Izuku felt sick. He felt the color drained from his face. He glanced at Kigo. The hero was still looking at the TV good-naturedly before it changed to the next report, and he looked back at his phone. He didn't look surprised or different at all. No way he's that calm. Probably just processing. You should get out of here, it's too late. Maybe I can just explain? What's there to explain? You're quirkless and he's going to hate you. Badesh, I'll go. You don't need to say anything. Thank you, Kigo. Izuku stood, not glancing at the man. Wait, what? Kigo yelped, jolting up from his spot. You're leaving? What's wrong? Why you don't need to say anything. I'll just get out of your way. Izuku, if this is because of the report, you don't need to worry. I'm not going to make you go. I was just talking to the police and we're clearing things up right now. No, it's not that. Please don't make me say it. There was a moment, Izuku with his back to the room and Kigo looking at him with worry. Izuku, are you worried because I now know you're quirkless? Dude, that doesn't matter to me. You're my friend. A quirk isn't everything and I'm not just going to treat you differently because of an extra toe joint. The green-haired boy froze. What? What? I heard he was controversial, but this is something else. Izuku looked at the hero, searching for anything. All he found was a genuine smile, kind eyes, and a friend. Why, you're sure? Kigo beamed, positive. Come here. Slowly the green-haired boy returned to his spot on the couch, the hero's hand on his shoulder. Thanks. No one's really treated me like this after finding out. Kigo's smile faltered, worry creasing his brow. You want to talk about it? No, not right now. Maybe later. That night, another nightmare danced through this vision, corrupting the memories. Each iteration got worse. The usual smoke, fire, and explosions ricocheted, but there was someone new. Each image was worse, some he was hurt, some he was killed. Some he attacked Izuku, some he simply left. By the time Izuku rose from the torturous dreams, he was a broken mess. His sobs went unmuffled, echoing through the house. As he had done with each nightmare, Kigo soon came to his door. Izuku? Can I come in? Izuku couldn't muster a reply. Finally, Kigo had enough of listening to the poor boy sobbing and carefully opened the door. Izuku vaguely heard the door open and the familiar footsteps. He peeked his eye out from his elbow and through the tears saw Kigo. His face was filled with worry, voice desperately trying to calm him. Kigo. Before he knew what he was doing, Izuku had dived off the bed and was sobbing into the man's shirt. Soon, arms wrapped around him and crimson wings soon followed. Kigo was confused. One moment he was trying to calm a kid who was crying his eyes out. The next, he was having the life squeezed out of him by frail arms. So he did the only thing he could think to, he hugged back, rubbing circles in the boy's back. Please. Izuku choked out, I don't want to be alone. Not again, please. Don't leave. The last part was barely a whisper. Izuku, breathe, just breathe. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not gonna leave. I promise, Kigo murmured. They stayed like that for who knows how long, the younger pleading into the other's shirt while he tried his best to comfort him. Eventually, the tears slowed, but the shaking didn't. Why, you're really not going to leave? Izuku said between sniffles. No, I'm not. I'm here for you, Izuku. Why? Kigo was a little taken aback. Why? Kami, who hurt you? Because you're my friend. You're fun to hang out with, you're damn clever, and just a really nice kid. You're like the little brother I never had. Izuku didn't reply, but Kigo could feel him relax. After a few more sniffles, Kigo heard a quiet, thanks, Kigo. I like it here. It's nice. I like having you here too. Kigo only realized Izuku had fallen asleep when soft snoring reached his ears. His feathers carried them onto the bed and pulled the covers over the kid. He let the child sleep, head on his lap and moon shining brightly. Rest well, Izuku. Tomorrow's gonna be one heck of a day. After a few hours, Kigo felt Izuku stir. He glanced down from his phone and saw the boy groggily waking up from a sleep free from night terrors. Morning, Kigo said as Izuku rubbed sleep from his eyes. Morning, the boy replied before seemingly remembering what happened. Oh, thank you. For staying. No need to thank me. I wasn't just going to leave you alone after all that. Speaking of, you want to talk? Kigo tried to keep the worry out of his voice. Izuku hesitated, biting his lip, before giving Kigo a small nod. What do you want to know? Firstly, I want to make sure you understand that I'm not gonna push you away or kick you out. No matter what, K? A hesitant nod. Good, why not start with why you ran away? Kigo listened to Izuku recount the day. How since his mom died, his father had blamed him. How he felt something was off about his father. How he ran from the man when he heard his plans. How he met and was chased out by the clerk. All up until he met Kigo in the alley. A burning anger grew in the man when he heard what the father had tried to do, especially when he heard about the fire. A mental note was made to sue the clerk for quirk discrimination and assault. Or you could go beat the shit out of them. Tempting. He feared the answer but forced himself to ask, was this the only time he used his quirk on you? A shake of the head confirmed Kigo's suspicions. This kid has been through hell. Izuku explained the abuse. How his father and friends would hit him while both sober and drunk. He talked about their quirks striking him and burning. Izuku started shaking as he described the flames and pain, both verbal and physical. A pang of sympathy racked Kigo's heart and his wing found its way around the boy. Earlier you mentioned people don't normally react positively when they hear you're quirkless. Were there others besides your father and that clerk? Kigo asked, even though he already guessed the answer. Izuku looked so small, shaking in front of Kigo with his head bowed. It broke the hero's heart to hear how much the world hurt him. Pay murder it is. Comfort first, justice later. Two things, can you tell me who else? And also can I give you a hug? When Izuku nodded, Kigo threw his arms around the child and let him rest his head against his shoulder. Then Izuku went on to explain. He talked about Kojit, Firmiku, Ryoko, Ribesu, Pinnock, and the rest of his class. He explained how the teachers turned blind eyes and scolded him. And then he got to Kakin and his nickname, Deku. Throughout it all, Kigo felt sick, especially hearing how broken the kid sounded. But the worst came when Izuku declared, but it's okay. It helped train his quirk. It let me be useful. He's going to be a great hero. I'm just overreacting. No. Izuku, no, on so many levels no. Being used as a punching bag isn't okay. You're not overreacting, that's abuse. It's just what happens when you're useless. Everyone who has ever told you that is wrong. Izuku, you're not useless. A quirk or lack of one doesn't mean anything. You're brilliant and kind. And the fact it all comes from just you and not from some superpower just makes it more amazing. You don't need a quirk to be great, you already are. Izuku was silent. They sat in the comfortable silence for a bit longer, Izuku having run out of tears long ago. Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry you've had to go through so much for something that wasn't your fault or even a problem. I'm sorry you've suffered for so long. But Izuku, I promise, I'm never letting you go through that again. I'm going to do my darndest to never let them near you again and to keep you safe. Do you trust me? Izuku thought for a moment, before some tears pricked to his eyes. Yes. Okay, I'm glad. Guess we have to talk about what to do from here, Kigo started. Panic flared in Izuku's gut, his hold around Kigo's ribs tightening. Can't I just stay with you? I like it here. Yeah, of course, believe me, I want you to stay here too. But I basically kidnapped you, so we have to at least get it legalized. Izuku let out a snort, flushing. What did you have in mind? That first day we met, you didn't want to go to the police because you thought they'd send you back to your father, right? Izuku nodded slowly. And do you trust me to never let that happen? Another quicker nod. Okay, I've got a friend there that can help us sort this whole thing out. Don't worry, he's trustworthy, one of the best. Do I have your permission to tell him what you told me? Yeah. Might as well, Izuku replied after a moment. Kigo gave him a small smile and ruffled his hair. I'll call him up in a bit, but first, you want to go grab breakfast? He felt a smile grow on his face as he nodded again. It was weird having someone genuinely care for him. Izuku liked it. Hey, detective. I'd like to file a child abuse report. Is this about your friend? Names of both victim and abuser, please. Sadly, the victim's full name is Izuku Midoriya. The only specific name Izuku gave me was his father, Hisashi Midoriya. He did tell me that his father's friends along with several students and teachers of Aldra Junior High were guilty as well. Also someone by the nickname of Kakin, but Izuku refused to give me a real name. I would also like a full investigation of the school under the charge of quirk discrimination. What on earth? Okay, tell me the full story. And Kigo did. He told the detective every single thing Izuku had suffered since he was 4. Kemi. I am going to need statements from Izuku before we go too far, but if this is all true, there will be severe consequences for those responsible. When can Izuku come in to give his statements? I'll ask him. Might be a day or two though. I don't want to push him too much. Understood. I'll go file these and take down the missing person report for him. I'll also notify his father and ask him to come in for questioning. I'll make sure it isn't at the same time as Izuku. I think that's everything. Oh, and Hawks? Yes, detective? Take care of him, okay? Cammy knows that if even half of this is accurate, he's going to have scars, both mental and physical. Understood. Believe me, he's like a little brother. I'm going to keep him safe. Kigo put down the phone and sat back in his chair. A protective flame had steadily burned brighter as he recounted Izuku's trauma, and judging by the detective's voice, he was also pretty mad. Cammy, what am I going to do? This better work. Vigilante justice is still on the table. Maybe later. You should probably start by telling Izuku that the detective needs statements. Yeah, but after all that, I don't know how to take care of a kid. You could give him to someone more qualified? He's been hurt enough, who knows how others might treat him. Okay then, go to the internet. Though he seems decently self-sufficient. He's succeeded in not breaking anything or doing dumb stuff for a week. He's been responsible with schoolwork even though he doesn't go to school and even has a source of income. You definitely have to handle bills and cook and buy food though. Go search it up. But do it with Izuku, just so it doesn't look like you're avoiding him. Oh shit, good point. Kigo left his room, stretching a bit as he entered the living room. Izuku was where he often was, sitting on the couch with a notebook open and the news playing. His computer was open to a list of requests he had for analyses or strategies. Hey Izu. The kid's head turned so fast the hero was worried he'd hurt his neck. Hi Kigo. Izuku visibly relaxed when he saw Kigo was smiling. I just got off the phone with the detective. Oh, what did he say? He told me he'd open up cases for both Aldra and your father. He's going to need official statements from you before they go too far though. It's up to you when you give them though since it's so personal. Okay, see can we go later today? Kigo could feel his eyebrows shoot up his head. You sure? It's no rush. Yeah. I just want this whole thing over with, Izuku replied shakily. Sure. I'll let Tsukachi know. Kigo pulled his phone out and dialed the contact, walking a little bit toward the kitchen. Hey detective, are you free later today? Detective Tsukachi waited in the interrogation room. The boy's file was open and what a file it was. It stated that he'd always be picking fights, goading and antagonizing the other kids. It claimed he was always seeking attention and constantly disruptive in class. He had little to no respect for authority and was a danger to the futures of the other children. These stories aren't adding up. Unless he's an incredible actor, Hawks should have picked up on any lies. Based on how much Hawks cares for the boy, and the analyses he's done for heroes, I'm inclined to believe the kid. Which means this file is wrong. Which means Aldra Junior High needs to be investigated and torn apart. The intercom in the room turned on with a beep. Detective Tsukachi? Hawks and Izuku Midoriya are on their way up. Tsukachi sat up a bit straighter and put the file down. Welp, guess it's time for me to find out for myself which is right. The door opened and a short boy with green hair and eyes walked in. Hawks's encouraging smile could be seen from just behind him before he turned away to the microphones to listen in. Ah, you must be Izuku Midoriya. It's good to meet you, I'm Detective Tsukachi. The detective offered his hand. The boy flinched back for just a moment before shaking the hand, nodding, and sitting opposite him. Tsukachi studied the boy for a minute. His shoulders were hunched in as if he was trying to make himself look as small as possible. He was chewing his lip while glancing around nervously. Pair that with the flinch and it definitely looks like an abuse victim. I'm sure Hawks has told you about the cases opened against both your middle school and your biological father? Midoriya nodded. And how we require statements from you? Another nod. Okay, good, that makes this easier. Can you just walk me through an average day? I may ask you to elaborate on certain points. A third nod. Thank you, begin when ready. What do you normally go through when you wake up? WL. Normally I'll wake up at around 6:15 a.m. Assuming none of father's friends are awake, I'll do some stretches for my back since the kitchen tiles are really awkward to sleep on. Just to clarify, your father makes you sleep on the kitchen floor? He doesn't make me, but normally a few of my father's friends will come over the day before for drinks and one or two of them normally take my room, so I have to sleep there. Tsukachi nodded for the child to continue. So, I'll do some stretches then try to get out of the house without waking anyone up. Normally I can get out fine, but sometimes I'll wake someone up or they'll already be awake. Depending on who it is, they might wake others up, or they'll yell at me themselves, or sometimes just let me leave. Tsukachi frowned. Can you elaborate on what they do if they were awake? Oh, they might yell a bit, or sometimes use their quirk. Beeb, it wasn't that bad, really? False. Midoriya, my quirk is lie detector. Can you tell me how bad it really was? The kid's eyes widened. Oh. He was silent for a moment. It left some scars. And hurt. Thank you. I'm sorry that happened, Midoriya nodded. Please, continue. I'd eventually get out of the house, then normally I'd just walk until it was time to go to school. I try to take a long route to avoid Keikaken. He's a childhood friend. Do you have breakfast? Oh no, not normally. I get hit in the stomach a lot, so I normally wait until lunch. Tsukachi's heart squeezed in sympathy. And you said you avoided this, Kaken? Can you tell me why? He gets really mad when he sees me. And is that the only way he reacts? He'll yell a lot. And use his quirk. Can you tell me what his quirk is? Midoriya didn't continue. Can you please tell me? This is very serious and he'll need to be held responsible. Midoriya's head violently shook. No. I don't want to ruin his future. Midoriya, he can't hurt you anymore. The kid's head shot up. I can choose if I want to press charges, right? I don't want to press charges. Tsukachi was taken aback. I'm afraid that's not how it works. A crime is a crime and the state is still responsible for holding him accountable. But it's not really all his fault. Can you elaborate? A nod. And no one ever told him it wasn't okay. They always praised him for everything. He never learned. He's only 12, he has time to change. That must have been hard, hearing him always get praised for hurting you. I never minded much, I'm quirkless so that's how it is. He felt sick. Midoriya, just because you don't have a quirk does not mean that that should have happened. Whatever they did to you was not okay. The kid was silent. This kid genuinely believes that he doesn't have worth. Cammy, I have to talk to Hawks about this. Okay, we'll include that as part of the investigation. But that doesn't mean he isn't responsible for what he did to you. But that's for later. Can you tell me what school was like after you got there? Sure. I try to walk straight to my first class, but it's hard to avoid people in the school. I try to keep my head down and walk carefully, but I end up bumping into someone and they get mad. I get tripped or kicked sometimes. It's pretty much like that for the rest of the school day. I try to sit alone at lunch but someone normally finds me. Did the students ever use their quirks? A nod. Yeah. Most of them. Did any of the students ever scar you? Yeah. Tsukachi's eyes narrowed. What did the teachers do? They'd normally ignore it. But if it got really bad they'd come tell me off for picking fights and send me to the nurse's office. I tried to tell the principal once when it was starting. They told me it was a good chance for the students to learn how to use their quirks. Horribly true. Tsukachi swallowed. Understood. Thank you. That school is never opening again. Why yeah? So classes would end and I try to get out of school quickly to avoid students. It only sometimes worked and normally I'd get caught and they'd yell and hit me some more. The kid's voice was shaking at the last part. If this isn't too sensitive, what kind of things would they yell at you? Too sensitive? You're literally interrogating this child about his trauma. Oh, normally they're just reminding me that I'm a useless Deku. There was the occasional suicide bait, or sometimes they taught me about my mom or dad. Suicide bait? And he said it so casually? That's very serious, Tsukachi started, trying to keep his voice level and professional. Can you tell me the names of people who tried to suicide bait you? I'm sorry. I only remember a few of them. I didn't even know some of the people. That's okay, just as many as you can if you want. Okay. Kyubi Firmiku, Akama Ko. Midoriya kept listing names, each one Tsukachi wrote down. Satsujin-sensei A.N. K. Kaken. A teacher told you that? Tsukachi yelled before he could stop himself. Midoriya flinched back, eyes wide, and shoulders tense. A pang of guilt wrung through Tsukachi. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell or scare you. I shouldn't have lost my composure, and for that, I'm genuinely sorry. I was just shocked and upset that an instructor would say something so terrible. It's okay. Midoriya still had his eyes glued to his lap, pressed back in his chair. We can take a break if you want, I know this has been a lot for you. And no, I want to finish this. Okay then, I'll try to keep this brief. Can you tell me what would happen after you get home from school? And normally father wouldn't be home yet, I don't know where he works or what he does, and so I'd finish my homework quickly. When he'd get home, if he was upset he might use his fire breath or just hit me. After a while, some of his friends would normally come home and he'd make me go sit outside while they talked. Then they'd finish and normally drink. Sometimes he'd make me go get them alcohol from one of his friends. After they got drunk, well, anything could happen. Normally they'd get violent and fight or sometimes take it out on me. I got a lot of scars from that. They'd also yell a lot, similar stuff to the students. Okay, thank you Midoriya. I will personally interrogate your father, but I can assure you, you will not be returning to him or that school. I'm so sorry for how much you've gone through. Midoriya nodded in appreciation and he seemed a bit happier to be done. I have to step out and talk with Hawks, but in the meantime, would you like some water? Sure. Thank you, detective. Kigo was seeing red, and it wasn't from his feathers. Screw the law, someone is getting stabbed. What the hell kind of person tells a kid to kill himself just because he doesn't have a quirk? Cammy, I don't even want to think about what could have happened if Kigo pushed the thought away, not wanting to think about Izuku dying. He vaguely registered the detective walking out from the room and shutting the door. He only looked over when he saw Tsukachi cover his face with his hands and loudly groan. A shorter woman walked over and the detective started, "Find that school and tear it to the ground." Every word of that was true. Find Hisashi Midoriya and his friends and bring them in, they'll be lucky to see the light of day after this. Detective Dash, Kigo began but stopped when the detective held up his hand. Hawks, you are interested in becoming his new legal guardian, correct? Yes, definitely. I don't want to risk Izuku getting hurt anymore. You're sure you're ready for this? That child has been through too much already and I'm trusting you not to add anything else to that. Yes, I've thought about it a lot, and I want to be there for him. The detective finally took his head out of his hands and eyed Kigo. Okay, I'll go grab the adoption papers. Once Hisashi Midoriya gives up his parental rights, they'll be processed and it'll be official. You can go talk to him now while I get them. Also, I hope you're planning on getting him therapy. Cammy knows he needs it. 100%, I was gonna wait a bit before bringing it up though, kid needs a break from worrying. The detective nodded and started heading down the hall with a huff. Kigo opened the door to the room where Izuku sat alone, clutching his water bottle like a lifeline. Hey Izuku, Kigo said, smiling. The kid looked at him and gave him a small smile. Can I hug you? Once Izuku nodded, Kigo's arms wrapped around him and held him close, feeling the rise and fall of the kid's shoulders as he heaved. He's alive, scarred and hurt, but alive. You want to go grab some ice cream after this? Kigo asked, patting the kid's fluffy hair. Izuku nuzzled in. Sure. They sat in silence for a moment, just breathing in tandem. Okay, I gotta ask, you are okay with staying with me, like long-term, right? Like me adopting you? Kigo asked, pulling back a bit so he could look at the kid's face. Izuku's eyes were blown wide. Adopting me? Really? You'd want that. Of course, I promised you I wouldn't leave, right? The greenette just stared at him for a moment before a smile broke across his face. Okay then. I'd like that. Thanks, Kigo. The detective chose that moment to walk in and place the forms on the desk, watching the pair with a smile. Kigo broke the hug to start filling the forms out. So, you'd legally become my dad? Izuku asked slowly, looking at Kigo as he spluttered. What? Izuku, I might be adopting you, but I'm not ready to be a dad at 18, much less to someone 2/3 my age. I will become your legal guardian, yes, but can we just be brothers instead? Kigo pleaded, smiling playfully at the boy as Izuku laughed. Sure. I'd like that better too. Izuku sat huddled up, leaning against Kigo as they watched the TV. 24 hours ago, the other shoe had dropped. The truth had come spilling out, but everything didn't fall apart. It turned out better than he could have ever dreamed. Those reminders drifted across his mind as he drifted to sleep, blissfully free from nightmares. He was safe. In the 3 weeks since the visit to the police station, Kigo hadn't seen Izuku happier. The kid would smile more, laugh at his jokes, and even make quips of his own. Of course, this came with sass, but Kigo would happily take a cheeky Izuku rather than a sad one. Izuku had been signed up for online school and took to it like a fish to water. The kid absorbed information with a passion, and it would be cute and inspiring had he not already blown through 2 months' worth of work. Thank Kami he's not using that mind for villainy, not that I would blame him after what he's been through. It hadn't taken long to realize that Izuku was a little touch-starved, and so what if Kigo was too, so he always jumped at the chance to hold him, be it a hair ruffle or a wing around the shoulder. Every time the kid snuggled into him on the couch or came at him with a snarky comment, Kigo could feel his heart soar a little bit. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Izuku was currently swinging his legs as he reviewed a piece of footage he received. It was of some D-level villain named Ouching or something. The villain was only known for attacking grocery stores or bars, nothing big enough to even catch the media's live coverage. Kigo had just turned back to the TV, tiredly watching the coverage of the opening of a new fountain, when Izuku spoke. Hey Kigo, you mentioned the police were having trouble finding my father, right? His voice was quivering. It had been a while since Kigo had heard the kid so freaked out. The hero immediately walked over. Yeah, why? Found him. What? Kigo rushed over and looked at Izuku's screen. The villain was looking out, his face covered by a red mask. Fire was covering the floor and overwhelming a poor bouncer. Shit, why are they letting a kid watch this? Yeah. It looks like the fire is coming from his feet but you can see his mouth angled downward. Also, I've seen that face a lot. Well, that's fucking great. Not that surprising. I swear to Kami when I find this guy. The boy was shivering now, eyes glued to the screen. Kigo crouched in front of Izuku, purposefully blocking his view of the villain. Hey, it's gonna be okay. This doesn't change anything, he still can't get to you. I won't let him. But the police aren't going to blame you. You're a victim too and aren't responsible for his actions. Izuku, look at me. The kid tore his eyes from where the screen would be and looked at Kigo through watering eyes. A soft feather brushed away a few tears. You're okay. No one is going to blame you for being hurt by a villain. Anyone who tries is an idiot. Okay? After a shaky nod, Kigo opened his arms, silently asking if Izuku wanted a hug. The kid accepted and Kigo poured as much comfort as he could into it. A while later, after they'd both calmed down, Kigo called Tsukachi to update him. Hey Tsukachi, Izuku had something he wanted to tell you. Sure, what's going on? So I was looking over some footage I got as part of an analysis for Backdraft. It was of the villain Ao-chin and he's my father. The other line was silent for a moment. Kigo and Izuku thought they heard a soft, fuck. Are you sure? Be positive. I've seen that face a lot and the fire spirals just like his. Well, I'll go submit this testimony. If everything goes as it should, well, to put it simply, congrats Hawks, you're legally a brother. The line went dead and the brothers exchanged a look. Izuku smiled as Kigo ruffled his hair. They'd be okay. Hey Kigo, can we go get ice cream? Kigo frowned as he scanned the database. Before, there were only small crimes attributed to the villain, a grocery store robbery here, a few accounts of arson and/or assault there, not enough to warrant much attention. But in the past hour, details had slowly trickled in. Abuse and neglect charges, his real name, last known location. The villain's connections had proved to be a spiraling labyrinth of people with no clear end in sight, if there even was one. A few names had started appearing in affiliations, the police having managed to identify a few of the people who frequented his home, many of which were other small-time villains. Arion, Sandy, and Demion de Calion Chesaur Nesis Puig. They'd each been identified, found, and arrested, both for previous crimes and assault. But it wasn't enough. Most were still anonymous enigmas, masked assailants free to wreak havoc. And their connecting link, the one they knew the most about, the one who hurt his brother, had practically vanished off the face of the earth. A boiling pot of righteous fury bubbled in Kigo, sick at the thought. It had been days, yet he still couldn't rest easy, knowing that later down the line at any time, Hisashi Midoriya might appear out of the shadows, might try to continue where he left off. And Kigo couldn't let it happen. Couldn't let the bastard come back. He refused. Enough of this disappearing act. I'm never letting you hurt him again. You're going down, Aochin. Katsuki thrust his palm forward and let loose an explosion. The punching bag swung back with the force and Katsuki grimaced and rubbed his wrists. What with the damn school closed, he'd been practicing against the sandbag for hours. He didn't know why the place was closed, something about an investigation. All he knew was that it was Deku's fault. The useless nerd had disappeared a week ago, and then suddenly the school gets closed? Katsuki was no idiot and this was no coincidence. Shitty nerd probably spun some bullshit sob story. Trying to hold me back. He let out a growl as the bag was sent reeling again. Faintly, he heard the doorbell ring downstairs, but like hell he was going to care. He kept setting off explosions, ignoring the conversation below him. His practice was interrupted when his old hag swung open the door. Katsuki, I've been calling for you for 5 minutes. Come down right now, this is serious. Katsuki rolled his eyes and followed the hag to the living room. His dad was there already, across from some shitty extra in a dumb trench coat. His eyes followed the blonde and Katsuki had to hold back a shiver. Who does this drug dealer wannabe think he is? Glaring at me like that? I'll show him. Katsuki was just about to give the extra a piece of his mind when he was interrupted. Katsuki Bakugo. Or, Kaken, am I right? Kaken? Who does he fucking think he is, calling me that? Katsuki's retort died in his throat. I'm Detective Tsukachi, here on behalf of the police and Izuku Midoriya. There's a lot we need to discuss, so if you'd please take a seat. What the fuck? Izuku was out walking, enjoying the October breeze. He'd rather be analyzing villain targets or starting his English final, but after not leaving the apartment for 3 days, Kigo had kicked him out, telling him to go get exercise and vitamin D. A few months ago he might have panicked at the prospect of being kicked out, but he knew Kigo was just looking out for him. Izuku smiled at the thought. He had someone who genuinely cared for him, who would worry if he didn't come back. A loud crash sounded from beside him and he turned. It took a bit before he realized where his feet had taken him. Alvira. Or at least where it used to be. After the investigation, the school had been promptly shut down, demolished, and several teachers arrested for neglect and discrimination. A pang of guilt rang in his head, but he shook it off. Izuku and his therapist had talked a lot about it, and he'd slowly gotten used to the idea that they brought this upon themselves. Izuku shook himself out of his memories. He looked at the construction equipment. It wasn't clear what was being built in place of the school, he just hoped it'd hurt fewer people. Izuku started making his way back home. Yeah, it was home. The place where he had a family. He entered the apartment, only to see said family holding a marble over his open mouth, clearly about to eat it. They stared at each other for a moment. Then slowly, the greenette just backed away, and closed the door, not taking his eyes off Kigo. Yeah, a smoothie sounds pretty good right about now. Kigo's phone was ringing. He knew it was. The caller ID read, Hero Rank People. Kigo sighed and answered the phone. Hello, Pro Hero Hawks. We are calling on behalf of the Hero Commission with information on the second Japanese Hero Billboard chart of this year. Earlier this year, you were ranked number 12. We are pleased to inform you that you have breached the top 10 and risen to number 9. This makes you both the fastest and youngest hero to ever reach the top 10. Is that so? Kigo replied, rolling his eyes. He figured the Hero Commission had some hand in his jump, but even so, he didn't want the responsibility of a top 10 hero. Yes, indeed. Congratulations. As normal for all heroes, we'd also like to extend an invitation to this year's Hero Gala, taking place on November 2nd. You will receive an email later detailing the location and further things of note. We hope to see you there. Kigo perked up at this. A gala? They probably have good food. Wonder if Aizu would want to go. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Yes, actually, there is. This is a bit unorthodox, but we weren't sure how else to go about it. I'm sure you are aware of the new freelance analyst that hit the hero scene in recent months? They've created quite a stir and helped quite a multitude of heroes since their debut. Well, at the insistence of Principal Nedzu of UA, the Hero Commission made an exception and would like to invite them to the gala as well. The issue comes with contacting them. As I'm sure you're aware, they've been contacting heroes through your agency, and thus we have no way to contact them directly. If you could give us a name or email or even address to them, that would be most appreciated. Kigo could hardly believe his ears. Aizu got his own invite. Hell yeah, address? Do they think he's an adult? I told him they were impressive. Wrangling himself, Kigo said as professionally as possible, well, they're a very private person. I will ask, but there are reasons they've remained anonymous. I can't give you their direct number without their permission, but if you forward me their invitation email, I will be sure they get it. There's not much else I can do as of this moment. Okay, thank you. Please try to get them in attendance. I'll see what I can do. The other line went dead and Kigo broke into a grin. Oh, this is gonna be fun. An hour later, Izuku got back from his walk, hands covering his eyes. After catching Kigo eating a bag of marbles a few weeks back, the boy wouldn't risk it again. Aizu, guess what? Kigo, I swear to Kami if you're eating marbles dash. His hand was already on the handle, ready to slam the door shut again and continue jogging. Come on dude, that was one time. Kigo called, feigning exasperation. That still doesn't explain why you were doing it. Like I said, bird's stomach? Kigo said, wearing a shit-eating grin. No. Birds swallow rocks because they can't chew their food to break it down. You have teeth. You don't need to do that. Izuku yelled, pointing accusingly at Kigo. It saves time to just inhale the food though. Kigo pouted. Too bad. Savor the food. Eat it like a normal person. Izuku exclaimed, arms flailing. Anyway, guess who got invited to the Hero Gala? Seriously? That's awesome. Congrats. I mean, it makes sense since you're number 12. Ooh, does that mean the rankings are coming out soon? No. You misunderstand me. Me getting invited isn't the exciting part. Getting an invite for a certain new analyst is. What? I don't think I've ever heard of an analyst getting invited before. Or maybe they have and I just haven't heard of it. That is a possibility. Analysts don't get much limelight. Do you know who they are or who they work for? Izuku mumbled out. Kigo face-bombed. Izuku blinked back confused. Izuku, my little bro. You are the analyst. You're invited to the Hero Gala. Izuku blue-screened. What? And me? Why? Because you're awesome. Do you know how many cases you've helped solve between all the heroes? When Izuku shook his head numbly, Kigo continued. 297. And that's in 2.5 months. You've hit the hero game like a storm and have worked through every case with incredible accuracy. I'm pretty sure you've got the whole community convinced you're an adult, if not older. But I didn't mean to. I just like doing analysis. I didn't mean to make anyone think I was older. And yet you did. I told you they were good enough to be professional. If I don't want to go? I don't know if I'm ready for everyone to know I'm just some quirkless kid. Izuku shrank in on himself and Kigo's smile faltered. Kigo moved over to Aizu, wrapping his wing and arm around the kid. Hey, Aizu, you don't have to go if you don't want to. I'm not gonna make you come with me. I just wanted you to know how cool you are. Do you want me to go? Aizu, what I want doesn't matter. If you don't want to go, you don't go. Izuku nodded, gratefully smiling. I'll go let them know you won't be coming, K? Kigo patted him on the shoulder and started walking to his computer. Wait. Kigo paused. Can you invite a +1? Yeah, I think so. Why? I'll be honest. It sounds like it would be a lot of fun to go with you. I just don't want everyone to know who the analyst is, and that you're associated with some dumb quirkless kid. So, what about this? You tell them the analyst won't be coming, and I'll be your +1? Unless there was someone else you wanted to bring. No. That sounds great, dude. I'll let them know. Kigo beamed, sending a feather to pat him on the head. Izuku smiled after him, a curl of nervousness and excitement dwelling in his gut. The gala would be fun, right? Katsuki was just a little fucking pissed. After that damn detective came by and gave him a whole fucking lecture, then sent him out of the room, the old hag and his pops had been treating him like he was some priceless vase. Or like a ticking bomb. Or some quirkless freak. Katsuki didn't even want to think about the implications of that. Now he had mandatory counseling, and mandatory curfew, and mandatory whatever the fuck they wanted. He couldn't do shit without supervision. The fuck was this? That damn nerd was just making a big deal out shit. So what if Katsuki had set off a few explosions in his face? It's not like he was gonna do anything with it anyway. The worst part about this whole pile of shit was that it was nagging him harder than Deku ever did. His fucking brain seemed to take any opportunity to jump to the nerd. And with each thought came another clawing gut feeling. That was another thing he refused to acknowledge. But any fucking bush he saw, any shitty notebook he'd see or mumble he heard would all trigger that same bitchy feeling. Katsuki stomped into the house and threw himself onto the couch. All day, he'd been accosted by feelings and he was tired of their shit. His old hag had not so subtly evacuated when he came in. What's her fucking problem? As the TV in front of him slowly booted up, he felt the urge to explode it. Maybe it's broken because you keep exploding it? Katsuki let out a growl. The damn school hadn't reopened, so he didn't even have any homework to preoccupy his thoughts. The old hag mentioned trying to find a place that would overlook his record, as if the schools wouldn't fall over themselves to get his quirk. So his traitorous brain had decided to fuck him over. It was all shitty memories, most about Deku. It's all his fault. Yeah. It is. If he weren't so fucking weak and pathetic, the school wouldn't be closed and the hag wouldn't be looking at him like a bomb and Pops wouldn't be silently side-eyeing him all the damn time and the silencer freak wouldn't have gotten arrested and Fingers wouldn't be boasting about how he got rid of Deku and they wouldn't have gotten questioned about the nerd's old man and his folks wouldn't be talking about sending him to some shrink and this fucking nagging would just leave me the hell alone. Katsuki was breathing heavily when the TV snapped him out of the spiral. It was some paparazzi trying to film some party or shit and getting yelled at by some guys in black. He inwardly seethed at his own idiocy and tried to distract with the sound. He got up when he thought he saw the nerd walking past a camera in a suit and tie. Fuck this. Fuck you eyes. Fuck everything. I'm going to bed. Not dealing with hallucinations. Fuck off brain. As he and Kigo approached the gate, Izuku's hands started fidgeting nervously. The cool afternoon air blew against a metal fence that went for what felt like miles in each direction. The gate was wide open and heroes were milling in, chatting with each other. A path that connected the street to the house wound out of sight between trees. You could hardly see the mansion that was supposedly hidden behind the trees. What the hell? No way anyone actually lives here, this has to just be used for galas. They had to deal with some overzealous camera people and Izuku, being the shy mess he is, had gone ahead while Kigo distracted as many as he could. They'd reunited a few minutes after and Izuku had immediately dived under his brother's wing. Probably noticing Izuku's nerves, Kigo nudged him with his shoulder and gave him an encouraging smile. The green-haired boy tried to reciprocate it, then fiddled with his messy tie. The brothers had gone shopping a few days ago in search of formal attire. Both had returned with suits. One of Kigo's feathers gently booped him on the nose and silently pointed toward one of the other attendees. It was Edshot. Izuku turned to his brother with stars in his eyes which faltered when he saw Kigo's mischievous smirk. The floating feather zoomed over to the hero and promptly tickled the back of his neck. Edgeshot slapped his hand over his neck, probably thinking it to be some bug, and the feather slipped away. Izuku glared at Kigo and lightly elbowed his arm. The hero simply ruffled his hair as the feather went off to harass more heroes. Kigo, I swear if you get us kicked out dash, Izuku hissed. His brother chuckled. They wouldn't dare do that to a top 10. Izuku's eyes widened. Top 10? But your dash, realization dawned on his face. You know your new rank. Why didn't you tell me? Kigo innocently shrugged but couldn't stop his cheeky smile. You never asked. Izuku only glared harder and pouted, nerves forgotten. Kigo winced a bit and glanced in the direction of his feather. It was burning in Endeavor's flames as their owner glared at his brother. Kigo put on his best nonchalant smile and Izuku almost facebombed. He settled for rolling his eyes instead. As the procession neared the mansion, his nervousness returned. It was an absolutely humongous building, stone walls stretching far above the ground and bright windows. The front doors were wide open and hosts waited at each side, checking the participants in. Kigo's hand stopped Izuku before he could walk any further. The boy turned to look at his brother. The mischievous light had diminished in his golden eyes, replaced by fondness. Before we go in, I just wanted you to know, we can leave when you want. If you get uncomfortable or just plain bored, we can go, 'kay? I might be here as a hero but you take priority, got it? Izuku was shocked for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Got it? Thanks. Kigo playfully ruffled his hair. Good. Now, let's go have some fun. He then whispered, tell me if anyone gives you any shit. Izuku let out a giggle and smiled, walking towards the doors. It would take a bit to get used to Kigo's protectiveness, but it wasn't exactly unwelcome. He'd barely gotten over the shock that he was living with Hawks before the whole gala thing sprung up. Kigo checked them in and after the guard looked each of them over, maybe a sort of metal detector quirk? Or even a motive checker. Or maybe he's just good at reading people and it's unrelated to a quirk. They were led into the building. They entered the main foyer. A central hall was in front of them with doors opening to the left and right. The stairs were roped off, clearly supposed to stop guests from exploring too much. Wait, does that mean there are rooms not meant for the guests to see? As in, people actually live in this giant place casually? How? Don't forget your plan. Right. Don't want to drag Kigo down. Gotta enter at different times. Kigo, I'm gonna go find a bathroom then explore a bit, okay? Okay. See ya around little bro, stay safe. Text me if you need anything. Kigo waved, walking off. Mission accomplished. Time to actually find a bathroom. Izuku wandered down the hallway, checking for labels over the doors or anything to signify their use. One of the staff seemed to notice how lost he was and approached. Hello young sir, you seem lost. Do you need help finding someone? Oh, thank you. I'm just looking for the bathroom, Izuku replied, his stutter returning. The lady nodded and directed him in the right direction. Soon after, Izuku used and then exited the bathroom. Okay, time to find where the main room is. Or I could explore a bit. Ooh, I could try and see some heroes. I do have that mini notebook. Would they get mad if I asked for an autograph? Izuku's thoughts ended when he accidentally crashed into someone and ended up stumbling back. He had bumped into a boy around his age wearing a pale blue tux. His hair was split in two, half red, half white. His eyes were also split, the right side was gray while the left was sharp blue with a large scar around it. But the coloration wasn't the oddest part, it wasn't even the large scar. It was the fact the eyes looked empty. No emotion flickered, just a cold, dead gaze. Izuku then realized he was looking at the boy for an uncomfortably long time and immediately flushed. Sorry. I didn't mean to bump into you. He yelped, hands waving. It's fine, the stranger replied, voice monotone and similarly empty. He turned away and disappeared into the crowd of people. Shaking himself out of the weird encounter, Izuku wandered around a bit before settling on one of the doors. They opened into a great hall. A stone fireplace sat on one side crackling while electric candles shone overhead, illuminating the large room very well. Many tables were set up around the perimeter of the room while a buffet sat in the middle. Heroes and their plus ones milled about, Some had spouses holding onto them while others were accompanied by children. Music was playing over the hustle and bustle of guests. There was even a large white screen on one wall that showed highlights of hero fights and rescues from the year. Speaking of heroes, Izuku had to rein in his fanboy instincts, eyes practically popping out of his head at the sight of so many. Is that Midnight? Semenis, Hornet and W. Oh, and Best Jeanist. I think that's Ragdoll from the Pussycats too. Oh, they're all so cool. Okay, I definitely need to ask for an autograph. But who should I ask first? Present Mike, Midnight, and Semitos look busy, and I probably shouldn't ask Patroclus and Achilles when they're getting food. Maybe I should ask Best Jeanist first? He always tries to be friendly to the media but is a little intimidating. I wonder if— Excuse me, you are blocking the entrance, a loud voice called from behind him. Izuku jumped and whirled around. A taller boy was standing there, though he wasn't tall enough to be much older than Izuku. He was wearing a silver suit with a pale blue tie. Rectangular glasses rested on his face, dark blue hair framing them. One of his arms was out at a 90-degree angle, hand flat. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to, Izuku said, stumbling out of the way. It is quite all right, but please try to be more conscientious in the future, the boy replied, hand waving wildly. Izuku nodded meekly, chewing his lip. The boy was loud. He looked Izuku up and down before continuing, I don't believe I've seen you before. Is this your first time at a gala? Allow me to introduce myself, I am Tenya Ida. Oh, I'm Izuku Midoriya, he said, reaching his hand out. Why yeah, this is my first time. I'm here with my brother. Ida nodded. It is nice to meet you, Midoriya. Perhaps we should continue this at a table? Izuku unconsciously winced at his name, but Ida had already turned away. What does he want to say? He can't really beat me up here and he doesn't seem mean. He doesn't even know me, he can't already hate me, right? Instinctual hatred because you're quirkless? Or maybe he has a quirk that lets him see others' quirks. But he doesn't seem to hate me. Or he's good at hiding it. Does he just want to talk? About what if I don't know the answers? Okay, shut up. Like Kigo says, you don't need to overthink so much. Alright. The two started walking to one of the tables when a girl ran up to Ida. Ida, I was looking for you. She was wearing a long red dress and a golden necklace. Her black hair was tied up into a spiraling ponytail. Yaoyorozu, it is good to see you. Ida greeted, turning his back to Izuku. You too. What do you think? The girl gestured around at the hall. We put a lot of work into the place. It is very well set up. Give my praises to the decorator. Izuku shifted uncomfortably on the balls of his feet. Should he go? They seemed to know each other, so he could probably slip away unnautic. Oh, Yorozu, this is my new friend. This is his first time at a hero gala. Friend? We're friends? The girl only seemed to notice him then, eyes filled with surprise. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I missed you. Please forgive me, she said, flushing and giving him a short bow. Izuku could only shrug, mind still reeling from Ida's proclamation. It was truly not my intention to ignore you. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. How are you enjoying yourself? My family owns the establishment, so I helped set it up a bit with my quirk. That is what I was talking to Ida about. Quirk? Maybe levitation to help get to hard-to-reach places? Though that could be dangerous for a kid. Perhaps something that lets her stretch her limbs? Or a wind one for dusting. It's nice. Very beautiful. I haven't been to any place this big before. I am Izuku Midoriya, the boy mumbled out, before pausing as a creeping sensation rushed through his spine. He felt like he was being watched. Izuku resisted the urge to glance around. We were just heading to a table. Would you like to join us? Ida invited, gesturing to a table a bit farther away. Of course. There aren't too many kids here our age, so we should stick together. Yaoyorozu affirmed, before asking, Wait, how old are you, Midoriya? You are 12. So are we. Come on, there's a table in the corner that gets less traffic over here. It might be a little warm though, there's a vent, is that okay? Oh, that's fine. Izuku followed the other two, only half listening to their conversation. Unknown to the trio of kids, someone was watching them. The figure peered through the ceiling vent, looking down at them. The figure reached into their pocket and felt the gift they'd gotten just for the occasion. A smirk spread across their face. A glint shone in their eyes. Perfect. Time for some fun. The figure had slinked through the vents with practiced ease. They slid downward, reaching the other vent easily. The warm air was blowing past them. Now to wait. A fan up above sliced through a light, causing their shadow to flicker. They were half tempted to stay here. The vent was warm, no one knew they were here, and they could slip out later. A nap sounded heavenly. But no, Dad would be disappointed. They were here for a reason, they should probably do it. The three kids were getting closer. Ida was talking to the short green-haired kid. A nervous voice stuttered a reply, and a clang sounded. Flustered apologies reached his ears. Shorty probably bonked into a table or something. Using the distraction, the figure rose into a crouch, the metal in their pocket clanking together. As they started crossing closer to the table, they pounced. 3, 2, 1, So Midoriya, you mentioned you were here with your brother? Can you tell us who they are? Izuku stifled another wince. Why do I hate hearing my name? It's not the first time. Is it my father? Is it reasonable to dislike the name just because it's his? Did I just get used to Kigo calling me Izuku? You could just ask to be called Izuku, simple. He was brought out of his thoughts when his foot caught on the leg of a chair which banged into its twins. His mouth launched into a series of apologies and Yaoyorozu and Ida helped him reset the skewed chairs. They started walking back toward the table when he realized he didn't actually answer Ida's question. Why I came with him? Actually, could why dash? Suddenly, another clang interrupted him. This one wasn't his fault. Izuku jumped back, bumping into Ida and letting out a loud yelp. Yaoyorozu let out a little shriek as well, but it was more out of surprise than fear. It's not him, you've heard his explosions enough to know that. Izuku looked for the source of the sound, still a bit shaking. Crawling out of the vent on the wall was another kid. Are we just gravitating together at this point? The newcomer was a few inches shorter than him and looked exhausted. His eyes were half-lidded and posture slack. He was glaring at the group, mouth curved into a smirk. His eyes seemed to focus on Izuku and looked him over, a shiver coursing down Izuku's spine. The boy's purple hair waved around his head in a tangled mess, defying gravity as it rose. Shinso, you shouldn't be doing that at such a formal event. Especially not so suddenly, you scared Midoriya. Such behavior is very inappropriate. Furthermore, Ida continued scolding the boy for his stunt. Don't worry about Shinso, Midoriya. He just likes getting around using vents, Yaoyorozu assured Izuku, chuckling humorously before turning to Shinso. I guess I should have expected this, though, since you asked me for a screwdriver earlier. Her voice was laced with good-natured teasing. You can have it back if you want, Shinso replied, pulling said tool out of his pocket and tossing it to Yaoyorozu, ignoring Ida completely. The blue-haired boy gave up and let out a sigh in defeat. The girl caught the screwdriver and rolled her eyes. Finally, Shinso turned to Izuku. Hey, I'm Hitoshi Shinso. Midoriya, right? Izuku winced again, and this time the others noticed and looked at him curiously. This is your chance, say it. Can you guys call me Izuku instead? Why, you don't have to if you don't want to. I know it's a weird request coming from a guy you hardly know. Izuku rushed before mumbling, I just like it better this way. The three exchanged a look before Ida affirmed, Of course. My apologies if we made you uncomfortable. Izuku's eyes widened a bit in shock before dismissing the offer with a shrug. There was a bit of awkward silence before Yaoyorozu suggested that they sit. Ida and Yaoyorozu took seats closest to the vent which Shinso had started to fix, withdrawing a few screws from his pocket. The conversation picked back up, the other three respecting Izuku's wish and trying not to pry. It was mostly between Ida and Yaoyorozu, Shinso sometimes butting in with a witty remark and Izuku only talking when directly addressed. He just didn't know what to do. It was clear the other three were already friends and he just felt like an intrusion. Gradually, they stopped addressing him. Not out of malice or intention, it's just how things were. Izuku didn't belong here, simple as that. Maybe not, but you can't just leave, that'd cause more problems and questions. There has to be something I can do here, something that won't make them angry. Speaking of angry, They might not be aggressive right now, but who knows how they'll react if they learn you're quirkless. Kigo reacted positively, but he's been the only one to. Sure, these kids must have some connections to heroes to be here, but who knows how many heroes would react similarly to Ka. A flash of yellow in his peripheral interrupted his thoughts as All Might appeared on the screen. He was fighting some villain with a bubble quirk that was shattering like glass. Izuku felt his mouth perk up. All Might. And he was so big. The sound for the hero view was muted, probably to avoid bombarding the guests, but Izuku could practically imagine the sound. Without even realizing it, Izuku had pulled out the mini notebook Kigo had given him and started writing. He wasn't mumbling out loud, but his pen was whipping across the paper, recording his thoughts on All Might and the villain. When All Might's scene ended, on came Night Eye, and then Gang Orca, and then Yoroi Musha. As each hero came and went, Izuku wrote and analyzed, unnoticed by the friends. It was nice, he was doing what he liked and the others could talk unperturbed. Kyuka hugged her mom and walked away. Her mother's music continued as she weaved through the hall to where she'd seen Yamamo walking. As she passed by the buffet table, she paused for a moment, considering grabbing some before finding her friend. Those dumplings did look really good, and maybe Yamamo would like one of those fruit tarts? Deciding against it, she looked away and spotted who she was looking for. Shinso and Ida were with her too. Also a broccoli-haired kid. Kyuka couldn't help but notice that he wasn't talking with the others. In fact, he wasn't even paying attention. He seemed to be looking between the hero view in front of him and something in his lap. Walking over, she peered over his shoulder. The others somehow hadn't noticed her, way too lost in their conversation about their families. No wonder they're ignoring the new guy, probably just forgot about him. Said new guy hadn't noticed her either, even though she was only a foot or two away. Wow, these people really need better spatial awareness. The boy was writing a lot really fast, continuing even when he was glancing at the screen. Slowly, Kyuka leaned over his shoulder and looked at the notebook, earlobes dangling. It seemed to be some sort of report of the heroes appearing on the screen. I probably shouldn't be reading this. But also, I'm bored so. She gave in to curiosity and started reading the new passage. Manuel had a good idea with attacking Arion from below, using his quirk to make the speedster slip. He's lucky that that worked though. Had he used the water to grab or even make a low wall, it could have worked better. He can theoretically manipulate the water enough that it wouldn't be permeable at all. In order for something to pass into the water has to move out of the way. With enough control, should be able to make it refuse to do so and instead act as a solid. With that, he could even theoretically make frictionless water and lifted Arion off his feet. That would have guaranteed a slip and he could then hold the villain down. That way there would have been a reduced risk of him getting away. Before she could stop herself, Kyuka blurted, "Dang dude, that's a really cool idea." The kid jumped and startled so badly that he almost fell out of his chair. He looked at Kyuka with a look of absolute terror, clutching the notebook to his chest. She took a step back, hands raised in surrender as the others at the table finally noticed the two of them. "Jiro, when did you get here?" Momo said, while at the same time Ida asked, "What happened?" But Kyuka ignored both of them and instead looked at the green-haired kid. Sorry for scaring you. I also probably should have asked before reading your notebook. My bad." He looked away, face still a little red. "It's fine." He was still hugging the small notebook. "For what it's worth, I thought the analysis was really cool. I don't think even Manuel's thought about his quirk that way." The boy glanced at her, seemingly surprised before giving her a small smile. Izuku searched the new girl's face for any hint of a lie or making fun of him. There wasn't any. "Thanks." She smiled and went to sit next to Yaoyorozu. The other three were watching the conversation with mixtures of confusion, interest, and in one case, horrible realization. "Me Izuku. We were ignoring you, weren't we?" "I am so sorry, I promise we didn't mean to," Yaoyorozu said, flustered. Ida and Shinso also seemed to realize their mistake and turned to him, a guilty look on their faces. Izuku gave them a small smile. "It's not like I'm not used to it. No, really it's okay. You guys obviously all know each other, I'm just kinda butting in here. It's easy to forget someone when you just met. I should probably just go dash." But as he moved to stand, Shinso put his hand on Izuku's shoulder. The boy poorly stifled a flinch. You don't have to go. We promise it won't happen again, the purple-haired boy said, releasing Izuku's shoulder. You don't have to go to any trouble, Izuku said, still drawing away. It's no trouble. Please, give us the chance to correct our mistake, Ida piped up, hand waving. Izuku looked at each of them, biting his lip. They all looked genuine, even the newcomer, Jiro. Do they seriously want me here that badly? I guess give them a chance? Worst case scenario, you go hang out with Kigo afterward. Or a different kid, since there seems to be an abundance of lone teenagers here. Izuku settled in his seat with a nod. Relieved smiles appeared on their faces, except for Shinso, who still looked tired. I'm Kyuka Jiro, by the way, nice to meet you. I Izuku Midoriya, but I go by Izuku. Jiro nodded in understanding. So what's this about quirks and analysis? Shinso drawled, glancing at Izuku's notebook. Oh, they're nothing really, I just like quirks and heroes and sometimes think too much about them. I throw my thoughts in notebooks sometimes. Nothing? Jiro echoed. Dude, I've never seen anyone have so many smart thoughts in such a short period of time. Izuku felt a blush creep up his cheeks and rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Now that things had calmed down, he finally got a good look at her. She was wearing a simple black jacket over a short blue dress and leggings. Her dark hair was parted at one side, hiding one of her ears while exposing the other. Then he noticed her earlobes. Your quirk has to do with your ears, right? He blurted before his face reddened. Surprise crossed her face before she responded. Oh, you noticed these things, eh? Yeah, I can control and extend them along with sending out sonic sounds. I can also use them to pick up on sounds. I just need something to plug them into. One of her earlobes stretched across the table to show itself to Izuku. It was incredible. It was literally just a headphone jack with the earlobe acting as the wire. How strong are they? Physically, I mean. They look decently sharp, which makes sense considering you'd have to plug them in to pick up sounds better, but how much can they lift? Are there muscles in the lobes, or do you control them with some level of telekinesis? Can you control what pitch comes out when you send out sonic sounds? Can you control their frequency? If you tried to shatter glass with just an attack instead of puncturing, would that work? How far can they stretch? What are the tips made of? Can they be used as normal earbuds? What would happen if Suddenly Izuku realized what he was doing and his face turned bright red. The others were looking at him in bewilderment or maybe uncomfortableness for all Izuku knew. Sorry. You don't have to answer any of those. I just got distracted. No, it's okay. I don't remember all the questions. I kinda just think where I want them to go and they do, Jiro demonstrated as her earlobes started zipping around. I have no idea how much they can carry, I haven't tried. I can use them as normal earbuds and I have no idea about frequency or pitch of the sounds. They channel the sound of my heartbeat, so it's kinda a dull sound. I haven't really tried to adjust it. I think they can stretch like 4.5 meters right now, but my mom's can go to 6. I can break things though. At her exclamation, Yaoyorozu sat up straighter. No, Jiro, you are not demonstrating that. It took us a week to fix that pipe. Don't worry, Yamamo, I don't have an amp on me anyway. Jiro turned back to Izuku and saw him deep in thought. He quickly snapped out of it, saying, it could be cool to see if they can carry weight. Even if it wasn't as much as an arm, they could help carry things and basically act as extra limbs, though you'd probably have to train a bit. It could also help grab things stealthily, especially since they're so thin with such a wide range. Or even cause distractions if you tap them on the ground or break things. However, that could be dangerous if something landed or hurt them. Tuning instruments or hearing irregularities in breathing are also probably possibilities. It's a really cool quirk that you could do so many amazing things with. Izuku sent her a bright smile as Jiro blushed at the compliments. Oh, thanks, she replied. See, told you guys he was smart. Izuku took his eyes off Jiro and looked at the others, who all seemed very interested and maybe a bit impressed. He shrank a bit under all of the attention, but then Yaoyorozu piped up. This may be a bit awkward to ask since we only just met, but could you take a look at my quirk? I'm having some trouble being creative with it and would love some help. Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. Izuku replied, a slight flush on his cheeks. I don't know how much help I'd be, but I can try. As Yaoyorozu explained the details of her quirk, creation, stars sparkled in Izuku's eyes. After he gushed about her quirk and proposed ideas to use it, Ida asked the same question. After hearing that Ida wanted to be a hero like his brother, Ingenium, and even had a similar quirk, Izuku did his best to remember his past analyses. As Izuku rambled, no one in the group noticed the white mouse bear dog sitting just a few feet away, listening intently. Finally, Izuku finished Ida's deep dive and turned to Shinso silently asking if he also wanted some advice. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw the other 3 tense, looking between them. Wearily, Shinso seemed to debate with himself before starting. My quirk is brainwashing. When someone answers one of my questions, I can take control of them. The purple-haired boy glared at Izuku with a challenge, only to stop when he saw his eyes shine. That's so cool. The other 3 at the table clearly relaxed. How long can you control someone? What happens if they hum or groan instead of a word? Does that count as an answer? How long can you wait after the answer to take control of someone? Are there limits to what you can make them do? Can you tell someone to forget something? If you told someone to do an impossible task, like jump 3 meters, what would happen? Can you use it on me? What? You want me to use my quirk on you? Don't you think it's creepy or evil? Shinso asked sourly. Of course not. It's so cool. You could dash. Izuku's eyes glazed over, their light dimming. His jaw slackened and his arms dropped limply to his sides. The other 3 at the table looked between them. After holding him for a few seconds, Shinso released Izuku. Sorry, probably should have given you more warning. No, that was awesome. Izuku continued talking, rambling about the intricacies of the quirk while Shinso and the others tried to keep up. Izuku wasn't sure when, but he'd become comfortable around these 4 and was happy they let him talk about their quirks without being creeped out. You do realize that now that you know all of their quirks, they're going to ask what's yours, right? Netsu weaved between the people of the gala. Learning that the analyst wasn't attending was a shame, but a new idea caught his fancy once he saw Hawks' check-in. The young hero had brought a +1. Even if the +1 wasn't associated with the analyst, Netsu was still intent on meeting them. If they were close enough to Hawks to be invited to one of the most important nights of the year for heroes, they likely knew something. The analyst was a mystery. They had hit the hero scene already operating with the support of Hawks, who had an equally big splash debut. But despite their arrival and imprint, no one had a name. They merely signed themselves as friendly analyst, smiley face, and let their reputation spread. Hawks' agency hadn't recently hired anyone around that time, and something told Netsu that they weren't an old employee showing new tricks. Netsu had even, partially illegally but no one would dare stop him, hacked into the IP address, but it merely circled back to Hawks' devices too. So yes, the analyst was quite a mystery. And Netsu loved a good mystery. As he neared his target, he felt his smile grow and a manic light enter his eyes. Why hello, Endeavor. May I speak with you? He chirped out, staring the hero down. The flaming hero glared down at him, his mouth opening with a retort before he realized who he was dealing with. He'd never admit this out loud, but Endeavor knew to not mess with Netsu. No one who wanted to keep their spine would dare try. What do you want, rat? The flame hero replied gruffly. Good. I was just wondering what you know about the current number 9 hero, Hawks. He's a brat and a child. And why do you say that? He'd rather perform party tricks and pranks than put in the effort to be presentable. It's foolish. And you were the victim of one of these acts. Netsu didn't say it like it was a question. He didn't need to. May I ask where this happened? On the walk here. And who was he performing these party tricks for? Why do you care? I am merely curious as to if there was anyone else I could talk to, so I may properly report this incident. Netsu played to the man's ego. Endeavor would never miss the chance to get petty revenge, especially if he didn't have to dirty his hands doing so. Smiles grew on both their faces, but for very different reasons. Endeavor thought for a minute, trying to recall the encounter. There was some child, hiding like a coward behind his wing. Was there anything that stood out? After a few moments of silence, Endeavor replied. Looked like a bush. Interesting. Thank you, Endeavor. And at that, Nedzu walked away. A bush? What an odd description. Likely a mutation quirk then. He zeroed in on his next target, a tired man whose long black hair was tied back in a bun. Can I not even get some peace here? What do you want? Aizawa groaned as he spotted Nedzu making a beeline towards him. Without answering, Nedzu climbed up the man, ignoring his soft grunt at the added weight. Perching himself on the human's back, Nedzu glanced around the hall, taking note of everyone and their probable plus ones. I'm not just some tree for you to use as a perch, Aizawa complained, but made no move to remove Nedzu. Who are you looking for? Oh, just at the guests studying humans. Aizawa hummed disbelievingly but didn't press the topic as expected. Nedzu's mind was racing. That child in Thunder's arms is his son. That woman is clearly Diamond's sister. Torrent is notoriously lonely. Ms. Kesho is here with her wife. That boy is Scarlet's brother. Nedzu had almost catalogued everyone and their relations. There was, of course, the few that he couldn't tell at a glance and also didn't know, but only one of them caught his interest. A green-haired boy was sitting at a table with several other kids. But instead of talking with them, his eyes were flitting between a screen and his lap. Green hair certainly could be mistaken for a bush by someone abrasive as Endeavor. There certainly isn't anything remarkable about him, especially since he seems to be trying to make himself as small as possible. He also isn't social, as if this was his first time here, only making it more likely the hero he's here with debuted in the last year. Nedzu's smile grew and he hopped off of Aizawa. The man glanced at him and then in the direction the mammal was walking. He rolled his eyes tiredly and elected to ignore it. Soon after, the tired hero was dragged off by Yamada and Namuri. Nedzu made his way over to where he'd seen the boy. It took longer than expected. By the time he arrived, the boy had stopped burying himself in the book. Instead, he was now talking excitedly to the others, but Nedzu couldn't make it out across the cacophony of the hall. Eyeing a nearby open table, Nedzu made his way over. He greeted the heroes present and then took a seat. One half of him was making small talk with the heroes, the other was eavesdropping on the boys' conversation. And what an interesting conversation it was. Nedzu felt his smile grow manic again, ignoring the fear radiating from the rest of the table. Well, this was going to be fun. You do realize that now that you know all of their quirks, they're going to ask what's yours, right? Shit. Abort. 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 Too late to abort, running now would just raise more questions. Distraction. No one's coming to interfere. Not enough time anyway to rely on someone butting in. Deflection. And so, before the others could get a word in, Izuku continued. All of your quirks are so interesting. You guys can do so many cool things with them. And help so many people. Jiro looked down at this and started fiddling with one of her earlobes. I actually really want to be a hero. Helping people like that just sounds so cool. But I don't know, my parents might not be too happy. Yaoyorozu put her hand on the other girl's shoulder. Jiro, I'm sure your parents would be supportive. They're not the type to get upset just because you aren't a musician. But they spent so long teaching me music, and I do love playing. I just don't want it all to go to waste. I'm sure they didn't teach you those skills with the expectation that that's what you'll do with your life. They likely taught you them just to grow closer and create positive memories. In that context, no matter what, they aren't a waste. Ida's hand chopped the air as he spoke. This was clearly a common topic in the group, so Izuku was a little lost. Plus, he couldn't really contribute anything in terms of support or confiding in parents. He hadn't even told Kigo that he wanted to be a hero yet, too scared of having his dream crushed, especially by his brother. Izuku glanced at Shinso, who only shrugged unhelpfully at him. If you want, the rest of us can be there when you tell them. You'd even have Ida, Shinso, and I at UA. Wait, you're all going to be heroes? Izuku interrupted without thinking. Ida and Yaoyorozu nodded while Shinso replied, well, trying to, yeah. What about you? You'd make a great hero. Or quirk counselor or strategist if you didn't want all the attention, Jiro butted in, seemingly relieved to not have to think about her own future. Izuku couldn't hide the shock off his face. You'd make a great hero. His mouth moved before he could stop it. That's all I wanted for a long time. But there's no place for me. His eyes were cast downward, a sad smile on his lips. What do you mean? Your abilities are incredibly impressive, especially for such a young age. Yeah, why do you think there's no place for you? Tell them? Don't tell them? Good job, you played yourself. They might hate you, but they also might not. It's hard to predict. They're nice and have really cool quirks. Perfect for hero work. Just like Kadash. But they're a lot less shouty than him. Seem less angry too. He's not really a good point of basis. It might be better to let them know now, instead of later. Izuku? You good? Shinso's voice made his head snap up. The boy was looking at him with the same tired expression but with one eyebrow raised in concern. Oh, yeah, fuck it. It's because I'm quirkless. Izuku could see each of their reactions as they processed the information. Ida and Yaoyorozu's eyes widened with shock. Jiro's eyes filled with confusion. And Shinso looked like he'd seen a ghost. Izuku mentally braced himself. Wow. You mean you're all that without an analysis quirk? Jiro spoke up, voice curious but not mean. Well yeah, here it comes. Wait for it. Dang, Jiro started, drawing out this. I wish I was half as smart. Izuku could only blink. What? I'm with Jiro, you're so creative I thought for sure it was from some quirk, or at least supported by one. Yaoyorozu was also smiling at him. You guys don't mind? Izuku was chewing the inside of his lip. No way all of them didn't care. No, of course not. You're still our friend, Ida said, smiling encouragingly at him. All of them wore similar expressions. A smile broke across Izuku's face, eyes watering. Thanks. And for what it's worth, I still think you'd be an incredible hero, Yaoyorozu affirmed, while Jiro nodded. A brain like that could honestly be more useful than a lot of quirks, and not just for strategy. Izuku could hardly believe his ears. All his life, all he'd been was just a useless Deku. And suddenly so many people are just ready to brush that off and ignore it? And for what? The hobby he'd been hit and burned for? The notebooks they'd torn apart? The brain people had written off as just an organ in a useless creature? They're willing to look past all of that, and even believe he could be a hero. Are really? He choked out before he could stop himself, scared to hear them answer, scared to hear that it was all just some joke. But it wasn't. They didn't push him away and laugh. They smiled and nodded, affirming him more. For the first time in a long time, happy tears poured out of Izuku's eyes. Shinso was still silent. Kigo wandered down the hall, playing with the lollipop in his mouth with his teeth. He'd grabbed the candy from a bowl probably meant for kids, but, hey, he was only 18. Eventually, the walls opened up into a circular ballroom. Posh music played over the crowd of dancing heroes. A buffet table sat off to the side laden with dishes aplenty. An ornate champagne fountain rested in the center with shimmering glasses surrounding it. Kigo gave the fountain a wide berth as he retrieved some food, both because he was underage and also because he didn't want Izuku to try and lug him home. Wasn't his bitch of a father an alcoholic? Another good reason to avoid alcohol, to not scare Izuku with his drunken actions, whatever they might be. After piling, chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, chicken, sushi, and chicken onto his plate, Kigo debated leaving to find a different place. He was in a room full of questionably intoxicated hero couples dancing. Not exactly the best ground for a single, underage, not even a year of field experience yet hero. Then he snapped to attention. Right, he had a plan. This night wasn't just a fun party, it was a party full of professional heroes from across the country. He was sure the commission would encourage networking, but Kigo had a different idea. What better place to find some help with a certain fire-breathing bastard case? He scanned the crowd with narrowed eyes. Good heroes to ask would be located in different cities, decently versatile quirks, and also strong moral codes. Several came to mind from Izuku's insightful ramblings, and Kigo spotted a few of them around the hall. Some were hard to spot out of costume, but he managed. He eyed his first target. A tall guy with dark blue hair. The turbo hero, Ingenium. He was talking with a few others he recognized, and one he didn't. Among them were present Mike, Snipe, Ectoplasm, and some dark-haired guy. As the other loud, blonde hero dragged the stranger off to the dance floor, Kijio started advancing. He took a deep breath and dragged a sly smile onto his face. Okay, Hawks, time to make some positive first impressions. It didn't go as planned. Or technically it did. But he was a shit planner. For as charismatic as he was trained to be, there's a reason Kigo didn't have any friends aside from his 12-year-old brother. So what was this brilliant plan? To crack a joke. By stealing a skewer. Kami found him. Izuku couldn't stop smiling. Jiro had just used one of her earphones to swipe a dumpling from a passing waiter and Ida was losing his mind. He was scolding her, but not cruelly or even with a drop of malice, maybe a little disgust when she ate the stolen dumpling, but that's beside the point. He wasn't calling her names or hitting her, only repeating the rules and talking about heroic actions. Yaoyorozu looked like she was trying to support him, but kept breaking out in laughs as Jiro fired back her own quips. It was unfamiliar and strange. It was just light-hearted banter between friends. And it was everything Izuku had missed out on since his diagnosis. But he couldn't bring himself to be bitter about it, not right now. Hey, I was just testing out Izuku's theory, Jiro defended, smirking at Ida. Turning to him, she continued. Update, I can carry at least one dumpling with my earphones. Izuku couldn't help snickering at her report, breaking out into full-blown giggles at Ida's expression. The boy looked like he wanted to argue, but also didn't want to disagree with testing theories. Burying his head in his hands, he gave up and collapsed in his chair. Shinso scooched over to pat him on the shoulder tiredly. If Izuku wasn't so observant, he might not have noticed Shinso whisper something into the boy's ear, or Ida's eyebrows jolt upward. Shrugging off the action, Izuku started turning towards Yaoyorozu's, laughing only to see Ida shoot up. It is getting late, I'll go get us some food. If you're going to try to lift things, Jiro, you should at least use your own food. Yaoyorozu, will you come with us too? The girls looked confused for a moment before agreeing. Nodding in approval, Ida said, good. Izuku, Shinso, tell us what you want and we will be happy to bring it back for you. Oh, no, it's okay, I can come too. Izuku started before Ida stopped him. No, it's quite okay, the three of us will be able to carry everything. When Izuku still looked uncertain, Ida continued. In addition, it would be rude to leave Shinso here alone to watch all of our stuff. Glancing back, Izuku indeed saw Shinso looking very bored at the whole exchange, still leaning back in his chair. As if this was a common occurrence. As if he expected this to happen. Izuku gave in and agreed, asking for just a bowl of beef stew and rice. As the other three walked away, something felt a little off. Only when Shinso cleared his voice to get his attention, did it hit him. Shinso wanted this. That's what he whispered to Ida. He wanted us to be alone. The memory of Shinso's initial reaction when he learned about Izuku's quirklessness returned to him. I knew it was too good to be true. They aren't all okay with me. Shinso doesn't like me. He probably hates me for being useless. He's going to tell me to leave and never return. And it's not like the others would take my side. If I told them, they wouldn't believe me. I should just... Izuku! Shinso's soft voice cut through his thoughts. Izuku turned slowly, desperately trying to hide any trace of fear or sadness. Yeah, Shinso? He replied slowly, trying to keep his voice from quivering. The other boy chewed his lip, not meeting Izuku's eyes. He looked very uncomfortable. So, how's Shinso started, seemingly trying to grasp for the right words. Eventually, he sighed and moved a hand to rub the back of his neck. Are things okay? With you? Izuku blinked at him. What? I mean, sorry if this is personal, but is everything okay? Like at home? Or school? What? Izuku had never felt so lost before. Shinso sighed again. Look, I know from experience how much shit people give others for their quirks. I got bullied pretty bad for a few years for mine, and I can't even imagine how bad it must have been for someone without one entirely. I was just wondering if everything was all right with you. Izuku was stunned. Shinso was worried for him? Kid? He was bullied for his quirk. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Izuku suddenly said. Shinso just shrugged. Nah, that was a few years ago. After I got adopted by Dad, things have been pretty good. My new school's a lot better and therapy helps. Izuku smiled. I'm glad. The other boy nodded in appreciation. So? Izuku hesitated. Was he really going to spill everything to Shinso? I mean, that's what he did. Kinda. Surely he deserved the same truth? Well, things are okay now. They weren't always, but now they are. You sure? Shinso asked, a twinge of relief making its way into his voice. Why a dash? And it was, I guess I have a similar story. Things sucked at home and school, bullied a lot, vandalism, the occasional suicide bait, the whole shebang dash. Izuku distantly heard Shinso inhale sharply. Then after my dad tried to get rid of me, I ran off and got found by a pro. He took me in and became like a brother. So yeah. Izuku raised his head, not even sure when it had dropped. Things are okay now. Better than ever. He let himself smile brightly. Shinso looked vaguely horrified before his shoulders relaxed and he returned a smile, though significantly less bright and shiny. I'm glad. But what they did was terrible. How long did you have to deal with that? Izuku let out a nervous chuckle. Up until a few months ago. It's still kinda rough, but I'm getting there. Shinso seemed to contemplate something for a moment before he replied, well, if you ever need to talk to someone, I can lend an ear. Oh, thanks. You too. If you want, Izuku reciprocated. And, thanks for checking on me. It meant a lot. You guys are the first friends I've made since I was 4. Don't get sappy on me now, Shinso said, but there was no fire in his voice. Here, gimme your phone. After trading numbers, curiosity got the better of Izuku. So, who saved you anyway? Shinso smirked. I've got a thing going on. I'm seeing how long it takes the others to figure out who he is. They're not very good. Is he really that hard to meet? No, they've met him plenty of times, they're just bad at recognizing him, Shinso said matter-of-factly before he continued with a hint of sarcasm. You might have a shot though, with your endless wealth of knowledge. Oh, smart one. Izuku flushed. If the others are struggling so much, I doubt I have much of a chance either. Some of you have been around pro heroes your whole lives, I've only ever met one. And that one promptly adopted you. Who is he anyway? Or are you keeping it a secret too? Izuku chuckled. I don't think he's nearly as obscure as yours. I can tell you guys, just don't go spreading it around, okay? One of Shinso's eyebrows tilted upward. He's trying to keep it a secret? No, he's not trying to. I just don't want to hurt his popularity. What would people think if this great hero took in some quirkless weirdo? It's just more trouble than it's worth. Have you talked to him about this? No? Why don't you start with that then? Izuku sent him a grateful smile. The two continued their chatter, avoiding more sensitive topics until Jiro's voice cut through the crowd. Hey guys, got your food? And guess who else? Hey guys, got your food and guess who else? Izuku and Shinso's heads followed the voice. Jiro, Ida, and Yaoyorozu were walking over, carrying several trays of food. But they weren't alone. Being practically dragged by Yaoyorozu was the red and white-haired boy Izuku had bumped into earlier. He was carrying his own food, his empty eyes scanning over Shinso and Izuku. Izuku glanced at Shinso, whose eyes flickered with recognition, and he nodded towards the stranger. Izuku, this is Shuto Todoroki. He's our age and also an aspiring hero, Ida introduced after setting his tray of food down in the middle of the table. Izuku waved. And nice to meet you. I'm Izuku Midoriya B, but I go by Izuku. Todoroki nodded and sat without a word or second glance. As the others took their seats and passed Shinso and Izuku their food, the boy didn't look up. A tapping on his shoulder caused Izuku to tear his eyes away from Todoroki. It was Jiro. Next to her, Yaoyorozu was pulling a portable scale from her forearm in a shower of pink and blue sparkles. A ball of string was in her other hand. So, you want to do some testing? Jiro smirked as she said it, earlobes gesturing at her plate of assorted food. Excitement overtook Izuku as he grabbed his notebook and prepared to record the results. Ida watched them tiredly. Momo watched the duo, trying to hold back her laughter. Jiro had 3 sushi rolls tied to one of her earphones and was busily flying them around the table. Momo had offered to make her some metal hoops to carry instead, but the girl had declined, claiming she'd rather watch Ida die inside. Momo couldn't say that she hated the results. Izuku meanwhile silently wheezed as the sushi dripped crab meat over the table. Ida was pointedly ignoring the chaos of the experiment and seemed very invested in watching the big screen, though anyone could see him holding back the urge to scold them. The trials continued, Jiro carrying more and more sushi, eventually reaching 8. As the 8th roll was connected to the others, Jiro glared at the ball of food. Her earphone jack was straining against the weight, trying desperately to get all 8 off of the plate. She didn't succeed. Eventually, she gave up, relaxing her earlobe and panting in exhaustion. Momo sympathetically patted the girl on the back and carried the sushi to the scale to be weighed. Huh, so only 8 sushi, eh? Shinso said, smirking. Oh shush, it's more than your earlobes could carry, Jiro shot back, using her other earlobe to throw a fruit tart at him. Shinso just caught it and ate it. Izuku stopped writing and opened his mouth, probably about to report the results of the experiment. But no words ever left his mouth. Instead, his attention was drawn to Todoroki, who was icing his soba noodles. The boy was absolutely transfixed by the quirk and watching its effects with wonder. Izuku, are you curious about Todoroki's quirk? Yaoyorozu asked politely. The boy snapped out of his daze and immediately blushed at being caught. "A little." "Roki, show him," Jiro ordered. "He doesn't have to. It's really not that big of a deal," Izuku assured, hands waving wildly. Ignoring him, Todoroki placed his right hand on the table and a small ice spike rose up from it. "And what about the other side?" Jiro prompted. Todoroki glared at her, then with a brush of his left hand, the ice liquefied. Momo thought Izuku's eyes were going to pop out of his head with how intently he was staring. "At least explain it to him," Jiro pressed, ignoring his glare. "I can make ice from my right side and fire from my left," the boy stated simply, before going back to eating his food. Momo thought she noticed Izuku tense when he heard fire, but a second glance seemed to prove her wrong. The green-haired boy was buzzing, seeming to be using all of his restraint to not spill all of the thoughts undoubtedly on his mind. It was both cute and incredibly hard to watch. Too hard to watch. "Todoroki? I believe Izuku wants to ask about your quirk but is waiting for permission." The boy's eyes narrowed and he glanced at Izuku. "Okay." With the floodgates open, did that even count as permission? Izuku's restraint shattered and he started babbling. Questions were fired rapidly at Todoroki, who answered each one curtly. Despite how simplistic the quirk was, Izuku's thoughts were still insightful and a blossom of hope appeared in Momo. Maybe this can help Todoroki? Get him past his hatred of his left side? This was not the first time the heterochromatic boy had hung out with them, though the experience was nearly identical. Whenever they'd seen him, they'd reached out, but Todoroki had yet to warm up to them. The boy was always short with their questions and blatantly ignored any about his fire. All they really knew was he had some problem with his father, Endeavor, but he had refused to tell them more. He only ever joined them because it was an excuse to be away from my old man. Momo couldn't help but hope that Izuku's sunny disposition might be able to break through Todoroki's icy exterior. She hadn't known the quirkless kid for long, but his passion seemed to be infectious and it was clear the rest of the group had felt it too. If anything could get Todoroki to open up, it would be a good mood. Or any emotion for that matter. But it didn't. No matter how many questions he answered, not once did any feeling show, and eventually Izuku ended with a compliment about how cool and powerful his quirk was and how he'd be a great hero. Todoroki merely took it in stride, then asked a question of his own. "What's your quirk?" "Oh, you Izuku kept stuttering, far more nervous than he was when he told the rest of them. Eventually, he got it out and started drawing back from Todoroki. His only reaction to the news was that his eyebrows raised slightly in surprise before he turned back to his noodles. Izuku looked a little lost, and so Shinso stepped in, muttering something into Izuku's ear that he accepted with a grateful nod. Momo couldn't help but sigh. Maybe Todoroki would open up one day. But for now, she decided to just enjoy the night with her friends. Jiro seemed excited for round 2 against strawberries, and Momo did not want to miss this. Then Ida broke the peace with a disgruntled yelp and a slap to his neck. Kigo and Tensei Ida scoured the halls in search of their brothers. After getting caught stealing the skewer, Kigo had expected a scolding and probably some glares. But no, the hero had laughed and he'd ended up hanging around him and his other friends. Maybe he wasn't completely shit at planning. Or just really lucky. It was fun. They proved to be quite a chaotic duo, much to Eraserhead's exhaustion. The tired hero had walked off, grumbling something about children, present Mike trailing behind. He hadn't gotten the chance to ask about Ao-chin yet, but he would. So, Ida eventually remarked that his brother would probably hate Kigo, claiming he was a stickler for rules. And wasn't that such an enticing offer? But kids love me, Kigo had taunted, and after laughing, the two had agreed to start searching. Their plan was to introduce their brothers to each other because, to be frank, Izuku needed some friends. He was 12, he couldn't be alone all the time. But if this, Tenya Ida, proved to be an asshole, Kigo was going to throw him out a window. No one is hurting his bean. Also, sue him if he was a little worried for Izuku. It had already been a few hours and no word from him, which was either a great or terrible sign. After meeting and tormenting a few more heroes, the blonde hero finally spotted a familiar green bush of hair. Izuku was talking animatedly at a table to a kid with red and white hair. There were a few other kids at the table, watching the pair with interest. There were 2 girls and 4 boys, including Izuku and the candy cane kid. They all seemed nice enough. Aside from the subject of Izuku's attention, he just looked tired. One of the other boys took Kigo's attention though. He looked like a smaller Ida. Yo, did he already meet Ida's bro? What are the chances? Don't forget the rest of the kids. Looks like he's found a nice little crew. A swell of pride grew in Kigo's chest. The kid was doing okay and he couldn't be happier. But then a terrible idea found its way into his head and a smirk dawned on Kigo's face. Twin feathers freed themselves from his wings and flew off, one towards Ingenium and the other toward the table. The winged hero found a nice spot to sit, Izuku's back to him and he grinned mischievously. Izuku won't kill me for this, right? He looped his feather around Ingenium's wrist and started pulling the other hero towards where he was, the other feather lying in wait near the kids. As Ida approached, he looked to where Kigo was smirking and his face lit up. Oh, you found Tenya. So that is your brother? Looks like he and Aizu got ahead of us. The older hero looked confused and turned back to the table. The green-haired one? Yeah. He looks too pure to be related to you. Kigo let out a laugh and glared at his friend. 1. I take offense to that. 2. You're right, I adopted him. The older Ida nodded before he continued. The feather unwrapped from the other's wrist and circled Kigo's finger. You want to mess with them a bit? Ingenium returned his mischievous smile. What did you have in mind? Kigo glanced back at the group. It looked like Izuku had calmed down and the group devolved into normal chatter. His feather pounced from its spot near the chair legs and tickled the back of baby Ingenium's neck. The kid let out a yelp and clapped his hand where the feather was. It floated down near his tricep and poked him. As the young Sonic searched for the source of the attack, Kigo's feather floated beneath the table to the feet of the girl in a red dress. It poked her ankle then zoomed to prod her swirling ponytail. The assault continued, the feather making its way between the kids. It silently dropped the strawberries from one of the girls' earlobes. They were all glancing around, frantically trying to find the source. A glance at Ida showed that the older hero was barely stifling a laugh. As the feather zoomed over to the two-toned boy, it jabbed him in the back of his hand and suddenly disappeared. Kigo stopped getting any feedback from the feather and glanced to where it should have been. It was sealed within a solid chunk of ice which the candy cane kid dropped onto the table. Oops. Izuku took one look at the feather and realization crossed his face. He facepalmed. After talking to his friends for a moment, Izuku started turning around before zeroing in on Kigo. The boy glared at him but wasn't able to hide his smile. Ooh, busted, Kigo heard Ingenium mutter as the two brothers walked over. Hey Aizu. Kigo greeted as he walked over with a smirk. Izuku rolled his eyes, trying to hide a laugh. Have you been harassing people this whole time with feathers? No. Sometimes I borrowed food with them. Borrowed? Oh my gosh, Izuku murmured under his breath. How have you not been kicked out yet? Simple, I don't get caught. By that point, Kigo had reached their table and leaned casually on Izuku's chair. His eyes drifted to the rest of the table. You haven't mentioned me to your friends? I'm offended, truly. Izuku turned around to the others who were looking between him and his brother in shock. Oh, this is my brother, H-Hawks. He let out an awkward cough. The others just kept staring. What? Aren't you going to introduce me to your new friend too, Tenya? A voice called from next to Kigo. Izuku turned to the person who he'd somehow missed, and his eyes shone for what felt like the 50th time that night. Yes, he knew Ida's brother was Ingenium. But knowing and meeting are very different things. Ingenium. Oh my gosh, it's Ingenium. It's the Ingenium. Ida quickly snapped out of his shock. Oh yes, right? Izuku, this is my brother, the turbo hero, Ingenium. Izuku was still too busy being starstruck to notice the bemused look his friends were giving him. Kigo snapped him out of it by throwing one of his wings to block his view. Oh, Mr. Ingenium, sir, it's such an honor to meet you. I'm a huge fan. Izuku stuttered out, pushing the wing out of the way. You too, kid, your brother is a riot by the way. Izuku looked between the two before he got an idea. Putting on the most surprised smile he could muster, he shouted, You made a friend. Kigo scoffed with mock offense. Excuse you, I have many friends. Oh police, I've lived with you for 3 months and the only friend I've ever heard you mention was Tsukachi. Izuku deadpanned, a shit-eating grin replacing his old one. Why you little dash, Kigo started before giving Izuku a noogie. After letting out a giggle, Izuku shoved him off. Gremlin, Kigo commented fondly, ruffling his hair. Izuku leaned back in his chair and returned his gaze to his friends. They had a whole myriad of expressions, ranging from tired to something unreadable. That was the most disgustingly wholesome thing I've seen in a while, Jiro smirked. Yaoyorozu elbowed her. I think what Jiro means to say is that it's wonderful to meet you, Hawks, and that we're glad Izuku has someone who cares for him so much. Izuku beamed and felt Kigo's wings wrap around him. He's a good little bean. He let out a chuckle. They all went around introducing themselves. Yaoyorozu tried to convince Todoroki to free Kigo's feather, but the dual quirk user firmly refused. Ingenium also gave Izuku an autograph. Ida offered his brother and Kigo seats, but they declined. Nah, sorry little bro. We just came by to check up on you guys, but we've got our own people to get back to. We were going to introduce you too, but it seems you got a handle on that, Ingenium replied, trying hard to mess up his brother's hair. Kigo let out a sigh. Yeah, we should probably get going. Boring people to talk to, heroes to prank, the works. See ya later, Aizu, let me know when you want to go. Have fun with your friends. He patted Izuku's head one last time as the green-haired child called out, Are you trying to get kicked out? Kigo merely shrugged as Ingenium followed him away. Rolling his eyes and shaking his head, Izuku turned back to his friends, still smiling. Unbeknownst to Izuku, the moment his back was turned, Kigo aggressively mouthed behave to the rest of the table with a glare. So, that was my brother. Definitely more obvious than whoever Shinso's dad is. Shaking off the glare from Kigo, Jiro asked, Oh, he told you about that? Are you gonna help us when he shows himself? Oh please do, we can't figure it out for the life of us and Shinso refuses to give us any hints. With your knowledge of heroes you'd be a huge help, Yaoyorozu pressed. I don't know how much help I'd be. I like heroes but that doesn't mean I can know them all or anything. Izuku's hands waved wildly, a blush creeping up his cheeks. Seriously? I bet you could identify any and every hero in this room, Jiro challenged before pointing her earlobe at someone. Who are they? Izuku followed the direction and saw it pointed at a short woman with gray hair and a syringe walking cane. Recovery girl, slipped out before he could stop himself. The jack pointed in another direction, dude with wavy black hair. Mr. Brave. This time, Yaoyorozu pointed, the man with wings. The fly. Another direction. Tall person in the blue suit. Selkie. Shinso's turn to point. That woman in the yellow dress. Mirko. Even Ida got in on the fun. That woman with her back to us with the short blonde hair. Ryukyu. After a while of guessing heroes, it seemed even Todoroki wanted a turn. He took one of his chopsticks and pointed it at someone's foot. The rest of the person was hidden in the crowd. Izuku squinted at the shoe, ignoring the fact that Todoroki likely didn't even know. There isn't anything spectacular or showy about it, just a plain black loafer. The pant leg isn't telling either. Izuku turned his head higher, scanning the crowd near it. There are too many people too close together to tell. No obvious clues at all, aside from them maybe being shorter than Semitas, Hound Dog, Midnight, and Vlad King, which isn't saying much. They're all UA teachers, right? Maybe some gathering of them? But they're all facing this way though, not looking like they're talking to a colleague behind them. Okay, I should follow that train. Instead of trying to figure out who they are, look at the people around who might give clues. There's Ms. Kosha, perhaps her wife? No, she's over there. There's Death Arms, but I don't recall any of his relations. Ooh, Gunhead. But the same issue as Death Arms. Amplifier is there too. Maybe her brother? Wait, no, he's too young to be wearing such a big shoe. Does the shoe belong to any of them? No, unless they're wearing mismatched shoes. There's that head of hair there. Brown on the top, but I think there are tints of blonde farther down. Long, looks like a woman's. Do any of pros have that style? Not that I can recall. Do any of their families? And then the answer hit him. Rock Lock. Izuku turned triumphantly to his friends. They were all looking at him, some with open mouths. He blinked. Did he miss something obvious? He tried to swallow but found his mouth too dry. Oh shoot, I said that all out loud, didn't I? Ida was the one to break the awkward silence. Izuku, I must commend you on your powers of deduction, that was truly impressive. Yeah dude, you went full detective on that, Jiro joked, smiling. Oh, thanks. Sorry if the muttering was annoying, Izuku apologized, a bit relieved that they didn't seem too bothered. Nah, that was cool, Shinso started before glancing in the direction of the loafer, and it looks like you were right too. You might actually have a chance to find out my dad. He ended with a light chuckle. Izuku turned and saw the Rock Lock and his wife walk away. But something else caught his attention. A tall red-haired man was stomping towards their table, a scowl on his lips. His piercing blue eyes roamed over their table before settling to Izuku's left. Even extinguished, the man still reminded Izuku of a wildfire and Hisashi and Kadash. Endeavor. Gee guys, WI is Endeavor stomping over here. At his question, Yaoyorozu and Jiro looked up and a slight frown crossed the former's lips. Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku saw Todoroki stiffen infinitesimally. Something flashed in his empty eyes. Something Izuku had seen himself wear many, many times. Concern for his friend filled Izuku and he almost threw himself in front of Endeavor to try and stop the man. But it was too late. Shuto! Todoroki turned slowly and stared up into the hero's face, fear replaced by cold anger. It is time to go, my son. Forget about these children. Come, Endeavor practically yelled, glaring at the rest of the table. Son. Todoroki stood and followed the man without a second look. A small flick of the hand was all the group got in goodbye as the father and son disappeared. The remaining 5 sat in silence, Jiro returning to her food with a scowl. So, what was that all about? Izuku asked hesitantly, glancing between their faces. It was Yaoyorozu who replied. We don't know. The few times we see him, Todoroki refuses to talk about it. Do you remember how his quirk can make both ice and fire? I don't think I've ever seen him actually use the flames, only the heat to melt ice sometimes. All we know is he has some problem with his father, but that's it. Izuku sat and processed the information with a furrowed brow. A powerful quirk like that and he doesn't use half of it? Or maybe it's circumstantial. Fire is significantly harder to control than ice, so maybe there's just never been an appropriate time to use his fire? And what kind of problem with his dad? Endeavor is the number 2 hero. What could be the problem? Maybe he was too busy? But Todoroki looked so sad to go with him. And Endeavor wasn't exactly kind when he came over. Maybe Izuku dug his canines into his tongue to stop the thoughts. No, that was ridiculous. Endeavor might have been brash and excelled in combat, but that didn't mean he hurt his kid. That's ridiculous, he's a hero. How many times have you guys hung out with him? He asked, a bit relieved that he hadn't said anything out loud. Only a few times. Whenever we ask he just says that he's got training. Training? To be a hero? Isn't it a bit early? With who? His dad? Maybe he just resents that he's rarely ever free? Wants some freedom but his dad's a bit suffocating? Izuku? You okay? Shinso's voice interrupted his dwelling. Oh, why yeah, just thinking. Should I tell them? But you might be wrong and it might just make more trouble. I was just wondering if any of you had his number so we could make a group chat or something, Izuku lied. A good thought, but we actually already have one going. We will be sure to add you, Ida answered. Though I believe Todoroki muted it. Yeah, probably. I can add you, Izuku, was planning to later tonight anyway, Shinso offered with a nod. But as he pulled his phone out, his tired eyes widened a bit. Whoops, missed a few texts from Dad. He paused for a moment. He's coming to pick me up. I'll add you before I go, though. A few seconds later, Izuku felt his phone vibrate and he glanced at it with a smile. Thanks. It's been great to get to know you. Shinso squinted at him then grumbled something about brightness. Yeah, you too. He'll be here in a bit so get ready to guess. Shinso smirked. Jiro licked her lips and curled her hands into fists. The others followed suit, preparing to meet this mystery man. Before long, a tall black-haired man approached the table. His hair was tied back into a messy ponytail and his black eyes reflected the same exhaustion as Shinso's. His mustache and beard were just stubble across his pale skin. He was slouching with hands in his pockets as he watched the group. His eyes lingered on Izuku and the boy could feel his sharp analytical gaze. Without even meaning to, Izuku returned the look. Pale skin, possibly an underground hero or one whose costume covers almost all of their skin. Costume unlikely because long hair might pose an issue. Eyes look dry and tired, and the long black hair is very familiar. What could the hair look like if it was let down? Before he could stop himself, Izuku felt his eyes widen and he shot to his feet and shouted, Eraserhead! Shinso's eyes widened as did everyone else's at the table. The hero's raised eyebrows were his only reaction. You found a friend who recognizes me, Hitoshi, Eraserhead drawled, glancing at his son. Honestly, I don't know why I'm surprised that Izuku knew you, Shinso replied, a wry smile on his lips. The hero nodded before turning to Izuku. How'd you figure it out? The question snapped Izuku out of his daze and he quickly stammered, You're kinda pale, no offense. Which suggested an underground hero, and the dry eyes and dark hair were recognizable. I'm a huge fan, Eraserhead, sir. A logical approach. The hero turned when Shinso snapped his fingers. Izuku, you said you do analyses of heroes, right? Did you do one of my dad? Izuku's felt his face turn bright red. Why's, but it's not that interesting or anything. Send it to me and Dad will sign your notebook. Shinso offered a mischievous smile on his lips. Izuku would blame his next word on the fact his brain was overwhelmed by the night. Yes, that was it. So at the temptation of an autograph from the Eraserhead, he quickly agreed. Deal. The hero in question only watched the exchange, a single eyebrow raised as his son sold away his signature. Eraserhead cleared his throat. Come on, Hitoshi, we gotta head back. Then, glancing at the rest of them, he added, Be safe. Yeah, Shinso replied good-naturedly. See you guys later. Izuku waved as he watched the duo leave. As he turned back, the other three still seemed to be in shock from the reveal. Jiro was the first to break the silence. Who the hell is Eraserhead?